bad.
What's up? Another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Brandes, also known as Ricky Brandes, and a great episode for you today. Today we have returning guest, Dr. Jessica Rose. She's been on the show before. We had a amazing 3-hour conversation. It was just a couple episodes ago. It wasn't too far back in the archives, so go check it out. I had a lot of amazing feedback. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm glad everybody enjoyed listening to it. Also, I invited her on the Union of the Unwanted, which is the other show, the big alternative media researcher conference call that I do with Sam Tripoli, Midnight Mike, and Charlie Robinson. She was on there. Amazing episode. That was just 1 or 2 episodes ago, so definitely check that out. It was the one with special guest Dr. Robert Malone. Can't thank everybody enough who joined me on that call, especially Dr. Jessica Rose, who was calling in from Israel. So it was super late at night, but I'm glad she joined us because we did talk about Israel. And you can go to the unionoftheunwanted.com to find links to everywhere where you can find that show. It's available on all the audio platforms. We live stream every other Monday. We only live stream on Rockfin now because of all the censorship issues. So we exclusively live stream there. Then within a day or two, it's available everywhere. So you can just subscribe to us on Spotify, iTunes, Podcast Addict, whatever app you use, and you can get the audio a couple days after the video is live streamed. So definitely check that out. Go to unionoftheunwanted.com. Speaking of URLs and websites, check out rickyvarandas.com. It is a great uncensored place where you can find all my shows, all my work, regardless of YouTube, Spotify, whoever may be censoring me. You can still find all my stuff always on my website, rickyvarandas.com, or the rippleeffectpodcast.com will bring you there. You'll also find ways of supporting the show. And before I get into all that, one thing I didn't mention about Dr. Jessica Rose, she's also a musician and surfer and all-around super interesting person. So if this is the first episode you've heard with her, buckle in because it's going to be fun. It's going to be a discussion about everything and anything. One thing I love about having guests like her on is that you really can talk about just about anything and have a fascinating conversation. And we basically go on this journey of exploring ideas. And the first time she was on, it was a 3-hour conversation. And this one's, I'm not sure how long, but it's definitely more than 2 hours, I believe. So I'm not sure we're capable of having short conversations. I think we really enjoy dissecting ideas and exploring ideas and sharing ideas. So really fun discussion. She's probably one of those guests that I'm going to have on from time to time. With that aside, back to this is a Value for Value show. My website, the rippleeffectpodcast.com or rickyvarandas.com will bring you to my website where you can find all the ways of supporting the show. If you can financially support the show, get some merch. If you don't want to buy some merch, you can support me on Patreon. You can donate using PayPal or using crypto. Go to my website and check that out, rickyvarandas.com or the rippleeffectpodcast.com. So if you can't financially support the show, share it, review it, thumbs up, subscribe to me everywhere, tell people about it, get these conversations out there. If you can support the show financially, please do. But enough of me ranting. You got a long podcast ahead of you. Enjoy this conversation, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Peace. What do you think of the Union of the Unwanted? How do you think that episode went?
I got lots of great feedback, actually. Robert seemed really thrilled, which was nice. I was very happy to have been I don't know, a good experience contributor for him. But yeah, it was great. I think everybody was really happy, and my friends are they were all very excited about it. Um, yep. How did you feel?
No, I think it was awesome. I was sharing it everywhere. I think I, my concern a little bit sometimes is I love health and nutrition because, like yourself, I've always been a super physical, active person. So I'm always deep into just like pre-workouts and creatines and how to optimize your body and vitamins and minerals and all that stuff. So I don't mind the science kind of talk. I enjoy it. And I know to some people it can kind of go over their heads where just like, okay, you're losing me. So it's nice to get a bunch of people together. And uh I think a lot of people were like, holy shit, I had to listen to that like a multiple times because it was just like information overload. But it was cool because there was a lot of different people with different backgrounds researching specifically different things. Maybe they were focused on different things, and they could kind of bring it all together and talk about it. And I give, Dr. Robert Malone a lot of credit for doing as many interviews as he's been doing and being as outspoken as he has. I know that, people weren't super excited about like his specific answer to like, should anybody take the vaccine, but just the fact that he's even just being skeptical at all openly and having that discussion, I think alone is a good thing. And maybe if we disagree on one thing or another, I mean, I don't agree with everybody that comes on my show, and that's not the point, right? I mean, the point isn't just to have a bunch of people on that help me create an echo chamber of just basically just stating the same things. I want ideas to be challenged. I want my perspectives to be challenged, and I want to hear other people's opinions and perspectives. So I think it was a really fun discussion. I know Sam was Tripoli was like he was blown away from it, and he doesn't focus too much specifically on like the medical aspect of it. His show is kind of more fun, and he has doctors on from time to time, but um I love having these discussions, and I love people actually tuning into the conversations that are about health and nutrition and well-being, and not just physical but even mental health. I've done shows with
Totally.
on with what's his name, Johan Hari, who wrote the book Lost Connections about depression and all that stuff, because it's information that can like help you now. You can listen to the show and be like, let me implement this to my routine, or let me deal with stress in this manner, or deal with anxiety in this manner. And so many people, I have a cousin who's been dealing, she struggled with depression and anxiety. And I was talking to her kids, who, she's my first cousin. So I was talking to my second cousins, her kids, and they were telling me about how like they know when she's on the meds because she's like a zombie,
Wow.
and I was telling them, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what happens. Because when they called a chemical imbalance, they're not testing to see which chemical's imbalanced or how imbalanced it is. They're just giving you a cocktail of pills and saying, try one of these. If that doesn't work, let's up the dosage, or try one of those other ones, And so it just this, and like I was telling my cousins, I'm like, I've told your mother multiple times, I'm like, exercise has more benefits than just about any of the pills she's taking. I'm like, runner's high is a real thing. People
Yeah,
do,
it is.
yeah, feel amazing, and it might be because of the oxygen, but you look at like a lot of meditation, you look at like Wim Hof, his technique, it's all about breathing in more oxygen, which is why the mask thing drives me crazy, because it's like you're literally forcing your body to take in more of the carbon dioxide waste gas than it should. And of course, I mean, common sense says that's not healthy. So sorry, I'm ranting, but you told me to bring that
Oh,
up.
good for me.
So what yeah, I mean, he's also getting booked a lot on like right-wing shows, and I know he keeps saying, he's like, they're the only ones who will talk to me. It's wild, because now, because of my perspective on these topics and my opinions on these topics, you do easily get lumped in with these other people, and it's like, I didn't join their team, they kind of joined my team, like I just happen to agree with them on this topic. It doesn't, it's not, I guess, good or bad. It just means that in this fight we're fighting together. Do you have
Yeah.
it with that, talking about these topics, because people automatically assume you might be from one political ideology?
Wait, repeat the first part. You cut out a bit.
Oh, I was saying, do you struggle sometimes to have open discussions about this, because people will assume you're of one political ideology or another based on your opinion on these type of topics?
Wow. I think this is more a phenomenon in America. I find I have problems with that, but not because of what I would call political, you know, uh, sides. Yeah, it's a tough question to answer. The weird divisions are like the subsets of them. I'm still trying to understand where they come from, because I hear a lot of people, regardless of their, I suppose, political affiliations, using ridiculous phrases like just follow the science or something. And those words, they're kind of connected to an idea that is so anti-scientific. I don't even know what to do with it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, people who are shaming people for not immediately running out and getting the shots because, they're clearly not following the science. Do you know what I mean? This line of thinking, like if you're not into, like, the vaccination program, then you're anti-science and anti-vaccination. That whole line of thought. You know what I mean?
Isn't it similar to when in America after September 11th, if you said anything that was anti going to Afghanistan or Iraq, they, for some reason there was this divide that people who were anti-war were also anti-troops, and people,
Right.
which made it made as little logical sense as what you're saying. Like, how does that, like, I would get in conversations with people, I'm like, how is me saying innocent people dying, troops dying for a unjust war, and me saying like, hey, they should not be sent there unless it's a last resort, how is that anti-troops? But yet it's that Joseph Goebbels, like, keep repeating something and it becomes true type of philosophy,
Yeah.
where it doesn't even have to make sense. People will just say it. I mean, it's no different than get the vaccine and you don't have to wear a mask. Like, I keep telling people, I'm like, how does that make any logical sense? The mask, allegedly, of course, is to stop the spread of the virus.
Well, besides the fact that that's a big stupid lie anyway, because there's no, I don't even, the word truth is just, I don't know, how barely has any meaning anymore. Like here, sorry to interrupt you. We're on our booster shots. That's what they're calling them here. And they're making their way through the kids, and I mean, they're starting up the bullshit stuff all over again. The lockdowns, you can't go anywhere without a mask. They're pulling back, or they're putting back this green passport crap. There are campaigns now, like real ones. Words are being spouted by the new leader. He actually referred to the people who haven't been injected yet as TERRORISTs. I don't want to say that on your show because, he actually said that publicly. It's horrific. It's like, are you on the same planet as me? Because I'm looking around and I'm like, there's something like way weirder than anything my crazy imagination could come up with going on here. I mean, it doesn't make sense. And another, thing that kind of should be like making all the people, especially the doctors, go, oh, okay, so the rollout is a failure, is that the majority, I think we talked about this in the other podcast, the majority of people here who are being hospitalized now with breakthrough cases are the injected people. So it's like that's kind of like synonymous with a vaccine failure. Like, and let's put all that garbage aside and the arguments aside and blah blah blah, and let's get back to what's really important here, which is that people are getting freaking sick and dying, and we need to do something about it. So like I mean, we're back. A lot of people are going back now to innate immunity. They're going to early treatment. They're going to higher dosing early treatment. So this is what so many people have been saying for ages, and it's the only way to go. I mean, promotion of a healthy immune system, number one. And if that fails and you fall, if you fall sick, then early treatment and avoid the long haul COVID, and employ real solutions that are being proven in peer-reviewed scientific articles, actual science, to be very effective. I'm ranting now. I don't even know if there was a question in there.
No, you're making good points. I'm science, like we keep saying,
right, science.
yeah, I mean, science should never be settled, and following the science, if the road is science, and that road should have many curves and detours and constantly be shifting, because as new information comes, we should always be open to, like, okay, looking at this, and how many studies are there proving that another study its outcome is incorrect? I mean, it happens all the time. It's like, oh, this study says this, we've gotten this outcome, but that study says, oh, it actually proves the opposite opinion. So it's like that's common. And before 2020, that was also acceptable. That was okay for doctors to disagree. I mean, the whole idea of like a second opinion, like, oh, let me go get a second opinion, let me get a third opinion, what does that mean? That means multiple people can look at the same information and come to a different conclusion, but the other thing too that drives me nuts is, when the hell did politicians and big pharma become the good guys? Like the Cuomo thing, right? So he I think he just stepped down.
We're so in the same wavelength, even though I'm like in a totally like low vibration today. I have two things to just like go on after you're done.
It's Cuomo, it's at one point during the lockdown, people were talking about him becoming the next president because he was doing such a great job and he's such a great guy and he's protecting everybody. And just think about the trick that everybody fell for. They thought this guy could potentially be the next president and he actually cared about people. And now he's being demonized and he's being exposed of the creep that he really is. And people are like, yeah, well, I guess we were wrong about him. It's like, no. They're all like that. The whole thing is a fucking illusion. It's a illusion. There's speech writers, there's behavioral scientists all over the place working with governments and whatever. Like in every department of everything you could think of, there's people are dissecting how to say things, what to say, how the public's going to react to it. So what does that tell you? Nothing you see on TV is real. Even speech writers, right? I mean, just think about the kind of dumb it down a little bit. Speech writers, we all accept that when there's a president speaking on TV, or even just somebody running for president, when they're telling us things and telling us their perspectives and explaining what they're going to do, it's all written by somebody else usually, and who really understands how to say things and how it's going to be perceived and all these things. And yet we're like, yeah, I like that guy, he's a good speaker. It's like, it's not even him. It might as well be a robot up there, and you just program to say these things because it's not a organic.
Some people say they are.
Yeah, well, that's a whole we can get in that too, the transhumanism and all that stuff. I mean, that kind of seems like the end game in some way. But when you look at when you look at the uh just how people just accept that, it's almost like we know it's a lie, but we're okay with it. We're okay with like just knowing, or we just forget. I mean, the other thing too, what you said on the You've Unwanted about Israel and why you think so many people were so eager or willing to get vaccinated was really interesting to me. This whole idea of like, you've almost created this relationship between the people and the government, because in so many cases when we say there's going to be a bomb, evacuate, they evacuate, and there is a bomb. So it's like, oh, there's this trust, because it's like they're saving my life, their intentions are to save my life. So now they say go get the vaccine, this is also to save your life. People do it. And when you look at times of crisis, right, so even after September 11th is a perfect example. Bush, his approval rating was very low after September 11th, because people felt like, oh shit, we're being attacked by terrorists, we're living in dangerous times. And then all the anthrax BS that was going in the mail, which that's a whole nother story too, that's very interesting, scaring the crap out of the public. All of a sudden the approval for the president and the government goes up, because when people are afraid, they're like, oh, protect me.
Rescue me.
Yeah, rescue me. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing. I'm sure there are political scientists and these amazing people who I can't remember the name of the job title, who liaise between countries. I'm sure what they know would really shock most people. the the setups. I mean, if you ask me, every bloody thing is a setup. The, it, it, you know, Everyone's so polarized about this place. You're literally either like, a Zionist, or you're like, whatever. And it's like, wow, guys. First of all, picking sides is dumb. Nature doesn't do that, so why would you? That's kind of my philosophy. And if you actually like nobody really knows except for the people who know, and it's only about like 10 people on the planet, I think, that know how awful the reality actually is. I know a little bit, but I actually actively choose not to know as much as I possibly can, because it's hard to know the truth of things sometimes. But yeah, I just want to go back to your thoughts before I completely forget. I was thinking when I was walking earlier, like, what would be like if you asked me, like, what should we talk about? In today's podcast, I was thinking, what should we talk about? And I always try and like go with the flow of where I am, because that only makes sense. And a lot of like things are pointing me to wanting to talk about the fact that, and you really like hit on this, or you hinted at hitting on it, how it's like nobody's allowed to make a goddamn mistake these days. Like there are actually like, these fact checking stupid things, the bots and everything. It's like their whole purpose, their existence relies on nitpicking like details. And I'm not saying it's not important to fact check. It's a very important thing. But when you're talking about like, maybe I should be more specific. When you're talking about like colleagues in science, like there are like communities of people even within fields, and it is very like, there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of like scooping in terms of like writing up your results and getting it out there first. So there is a lot of that going on. But that's one of the things that kind of annoys me in the whole academic realm. It's like, and it's being amplified in like more put in your face these days because of these times. It's like, what happened to like being able to make an honest mistake and getting corrected and saying, oh, damn, I made a mistake, and learning from it and then making it better and building with like cooperation. So I'm ranting again, but it just seems to me that it's become unacceptable to make an honest mistake. And I think that's ridiculous, because that is being human. And that's kind of what, you know, I summarize in my, what would we talk about tonight? And I think it's like, everyone would love to talk about getting back to humanity, because it's like, we're all like this. Oh my God, I don't know what to say. I shouldn't have said that. I blah, 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 blah. I think everyone's like really stressed. And it's not just because of the COVID. It's not just because of the masks. I think it's like the whole thing, the digital, you know, environment constantly sending like signals and interfering with your everything, and not getting enough nature and not getting enough release. And so it's like, and now we have all these like in your face, enforced like commands to stop being human. Don't hug, don't go near people, don't show your face, don't say that, we didn't tell you to say that, don't think. I mean, everything that kind of makes you a human being is being like, screw it, I'll use the word raped. It's like, so I think maybe we know it's not possible for a large majority of people to even conceptualize that perhaps they're losing their humanity, which is beyond me, because I don't see how you couldn't see that these days. But for the people who kind of feel like, I feel like I'm losing my humanity and I'm not okay with it, and I'm horribly frustrated, and I want to scream, and I have no one to talk to, I think like I would love to promote, if I say anything useful tonight, everyone to feel okay about talking about how shitty you might feel, because the other thing you kind of mentioned, besides the big pharma thing, which I'm actually studying right now as part of my VAERS analysis, are increased suicides, which is not only just happening because people are depressed, it's actually happening as a byproduct of these injections. And I'm not making any hypotheses about that yet, if it's physiological or if it's just that people end up succumbing to some other adverse event and just feel so shitty they don't want to do it anymore. But yeah, I guess I'm ranting, but to ball up this thought, it's like, God damn, let's like really like grab our humanity by the balls and like just hold on to it, because it's important. We're making mistakes. We're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to cry. We're allowed to, you know, get fat. You know, we're allowed to be thin. We're allowed whatever, you know. And the other thing is, before I forget, you made a comment about big pharma being like, you know, getting a star of martyrdom or whatever. And I just said this as a response on a Facebook post. I'm like, when did it become like the norm for people that like I know, that I love, that I hung out with for 20 years, to reject what I'm saying as a trained scientist and mock me in favor of what a frickin' asshole who works at a big pharma companies is dictating? It's like, and I know that I simplified that right now, but I just don't get that. It's like, do you even know what big pharma is? It's not a person, it's like a corporation, and the goal is to make profits. There is no goal other than that. They're not trying to make people healthy. Like, are you kidding me if you believe that? They're trying to make money. And, you know, it's, I don't know about everyone else, but I don't give a crap if your bloody pharma company's making money or not. I care way more about the well-being of living beings. I care more about health, personal health, the health of my community. It's like, why are these really simple things still being like, still, I don't know, man. The wool over the eyes thing, you kind of hope every day that it's just gonna like become thinner or get pulled back, but it's just not happening, and I don't get it. It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm the crazy one.
No, you're definitely not. And a lot of people in the content creator community that I live in were getting messages like I was getting from people who are like, "Hey, I feel like I'm fucking going crazy," and listening to your podcast reminds me I'm sane, and other people are feeling the same way and having the same discussions and the same skepticism. And I don't think it was coincidental that in 2020 everybody was tricked and it worked so well because we weren't getting together. Because if people were getting together and we're like, hey, that's not making a whole lot of sense, right? And aren't they flip-flopping on this? And I mean, you can go back, it's hard to find because if you go on YouTube, it's like all mainstream media. If you search anything, it's all Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. But you can find the CDC, Dr. Fauci, the experts constantly contradicting themselves, like things that they were saying when Trump was still in office. I think there was a which podcast I was listening to where they had actually had a clip of Cuomo saying, I'm not going to take the vaccine just because Trump tells me. I'm going to have independent researchers make sure it's safe first. And now it's like, if you don't get the vaccine, you can't eat in my city. And it's like it's wild that they contradict themselves all the time. And people weren't getting together and talking about these contradictions. They weren't getting together and connecting the dots, because there's a great documentary called Press for Truth, and it was about the 9/11 attacks, but it was specifically about these four widows. They call them the Jersey girls. They're all from New Jersey. They lost their husbands, and they're really like just kind of blown away by the lack of an investigation into the 9/11 and how like there was just so many things that went wrong and how could they let it happen. So they start kind of trying to put together the pieces, and they're the ones who actually forced the 9/11 commission report, because if it wasn't for these women, there would be no investigation into 9/11, which is absolutely insane to think of. But they found a website, and I forget who the guy is who had the website. What kind of put everything together was they found this website that took all these articles and all these interviews and all these things and started connecting them and putting them in a timeline. And I remember in the documentary, the guy who created the website's like, he's like, yeah, if you see this little article here, you're like, that's kind of weird, and you see this little interview here, we're like, yeah, that's kind of weird because that doesn't match what they're saying over there. But until somebody puts them all together and you see, like, okay, how many coincidences do you need, or how many things to make you skeptical do you need before you're like, okay, there's something more than just, there's something more here than what this surface looks like. And it reminds me of what's going on now, because what happens is like they'll see something that doesn't make sense and then they go on with their everyday life and they kind of forget about it. They'll maybe run into a video and you're like, yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And over again, you'll run into these little things that make you skeptical. But until somebody actually puts them down and puts them all together, and you're like, holy shit, I could not believe how many pieces of evidence there is that we've been lied to, how many pieces of evidence that the science that they're telling us to listen to and follow is constantly changing, and not even their recommendations are cut and dry. I think people are, it's almost like people are too busy and they don't take the time to actually look into these things. And the people who do are like, what the fuck? Like, this is so fucking obvious. It's like, but we're deep into these topics and looking into it and actually being skeptical and asking the questions, where everybody else is like, yeah, the TV's telling me I should wear a mask again, or the TV's, and I'm seeing it now. I went to I go to the gym in the morning before work. And just because the TV told you that you should be, worried about this new variant, that all of a sudden people are wearing masks again. I'm like, you've been in the gym every day, you know, since they opened up, every week. You're fine, and everybody around you is fine. But because the TV tells you things aren't fine, even though what you're seeing, you know, your reality hasn't changed.
Yeah, people don't trust their eyes anymore, it seems. Maybe they never did. Maybe it's just that there's like too much more stimulation from the yak box. I don't know. Can I share my screen with you so I can show you on the subject of evidence that makes you go, this is so goddamn obvious. But the problem is people don't know about it. So I want to show everyone. I might as well do some actual like work instead of just, yeah, I don't know. No, this is work too. It's important to talk about your
I think if you attempt to share, then it'll ask me for permission. Is it down there or no? Does it give you
the host disabled participant screen sharing?
Multiple participants can share. Oh, there we go. How about that?
Yeah, I just have to open PowerPoint, which is probably going to make me go a little bit homerized.
But it's yeah. I mean, not people not getting together, people not. I forget who it was who was on the show. She was a futurist and an author, and she was talking about how humans are at their happiest and most productive when they're getting 6 hours of interaction with other humans daily. And I mean, we're social creatures.
6 hours, wow.
You know, we're social creatures. We're, you know, we're the happiest. I mean, think about it, right? Even something as, and this sounds silly, but it's a good example. If I go to a bar, right, and I'm with a good group of friends and we're having a good talk, we're drinking, we're laughing, maybe even debating some things, I'll look back and I'm like, that was a fucking great time, you know? And it was because I was around people and with people that I like and love and enjoy. And then if I'm go to the same bar by myself and surroundings haven't changed, but because I'm not being social, it can be a boring experience. So it's or how many times people will be like, oh, this bar is dead, let's go to the next one, you know? And it's like, well, what does it matter if it's dead? It's because we like being around others. We like socializing. We like there's energy that is contagious when you're around certain people. You know, when you have those friends that you're like silly with, and those friends that you have like more serious conversations with, and there's vibes and energy that we kind of get from one another that I think is important. And we stripped everybody of that in 2020, and we just kept saying, well, maybe next year things will be back to normal. It's like, well, some people didn't have next year. And if we constantly keep repeating like, don't take any day for granted, and you know, no day is promised, we literally just threw all that out the window and took a whole year for granted and just acted like everybody's going to live next year, right? And we'll, you know, we can just redo it next year. It's like, no, there's little kids that will never get their birthdays, or there's kids who will never get their graduation back or their prom, all those memories that they should be creating and enjoying, they never get that back. And now we just look back and say, oops, we fucked up. And for some people, it's like, well, why would they do it? It's like, we go to wars, okay? Innocent people die. Billions of taxpayers' money gets spent on a unjust war. And then we look back at it historically and say, yeah, we probably fucked up. Or maybe we did lie to the public about the necessity to go there. And they just kind of shrug and move on with their lives. So those are the same people that you think care about you. It's madness. So this is
it's virtue signaling, which is like my new most loathed character trait, and I think it is a trait now. It's like I have blue eyes and I virtue signal, you know. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, the total VARs count and death count.
Yeah, okay. Yes, you kind of well, my computer spinny wheeled a little bit, so I missed some of what you were saying now to get this up. But I'm putting, just so everyone knows, because I've had a lot of requests pertaining to my my VAERS summary video on YouTube for an update, because like that's so outdated now, it's not even funny. So I'm working on that. Not even this slide is up to date, but it's almost up to date because it changes every week. The number of adverse events in the VAERS database, which is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System for the United States, for those people who don't know. That's basically my involvement in this whole thing, by the way. So this just shows you, for the people who don't know, this is the most obvious way to show you that what's happening now is appalling, and it shouldn't be continuing. It shouldn't have been continued like months ago, because this system is designed to allow detection of safety signals that weren't detected during like pre-market testing, like during the clinical trials. So yeah, it's off the charts. So these two figures, there's one on the left, one on the right. The one on the left is the total adverse event count for the last 10 years. So you can see it's pretty much the same for, since 2011. We have a certain number of people getting a certain number of different kinds of vaccines every year. Pretty much the same number of people report the same number of adverse events. So nothing weird there. But look at 2021. We're only halfway through the year, by the way. So this is, and it's growing. That's the most important thing. So we are off the charts, atypical for the number and percentage, of course, of adverse events being reported to VAERS. And I remind everyone, these are just the reported adverse events. And the best estimate, and I can explain where that comes from, of the underreporting factor, which is the number of times that you have to multiply this by in order to get to the actual number, is about 30. So the plot on the left is exactly the same idea, except only for deaths. So, the very, very, very few deaths. And I remind everyone, again, these are all the vaccines combined. And there are a lot of them, a lot. There's like hundreds, unless I miss my count. So this is all the combined deaths for all the combined vaccines over the last 10 years. And we're already at 6,636 today. And again, a very important thing to know with regards to this being extraordinarily atypical is that the last time any decent number of deaths occurred in the context of a vaccine rollout was with the swine flu, and the cutoff was 50 people. So it reached, I think the death count approached 50, and they said, okay, screw this. We're stopping the rollout. This isn't good. So the biggest question on everybody's mind, who knows anything about this, and now all of you know, is what's the goddamn cutoff? Like if you multiply 6,636 times 30, you get like almost 200,000, I think, unless my math is wrong. So, and that's just, a best guesstimate of the underreporting factor. So what's the cutoff? Are we waiting for a certain number of people to kick off before this stops? Because
so let me make, so there's gonna, if somebody was listening to this and they disagree with us, what they would say is, well, those are how many deaths. I mean, okay, so if we don't know how much it's underreported, we know it's definitely underreported. I think it was Harvard, right, who did a study that the VAERS, I always pronounce it differently. I don't know what the proper term is, but whatever. But they said that 1% of the adverse reactions are actually put it in the system. So that's 1%. I know Del Bigtree is always talking about that study because it's so relevant.
What does he think? Does he think it's 1% as well?
Yeah, he repeats that study quite often. It was a
Okay.
Harvard Medical, or what, I think they were actually asked to do the research on it just because they were curious on how, if it's underreported, how much it's underreported, and they said 1% is usually so. Regardless, I think everybody can agree on at least the fact that it's underreported.
Yeah.
Somebody listening who would disagree with us would say, well, look how many people have been vaccinated, 6,000 deaths compared to how many people are dying of COVID, that the risk ratio, analysts, I mean, would say that you're at greater risk of dying of COVID than you are at this. My argument is always, even if, even if you believe that, the thing about the vaccine that makes it scarier is that the vaccine can hurt and harm somebody healthy
Yes.
and young, like you or myself. And
Yes.
so the virus, I mean, it's almost, even with the mainstream numbers, it's almost undebatable that the majority of people are obese, they're older, they have multiple health issues. So if you're a young, healthy person, when I see young, healthy people talking about getting the vaccine, I mean, I look at them like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like,
Yeah. I'm like, what are you out of your mind? Those are my exact words. Like, are you out of your mind?
yeah, but
Why would you even consider that? And most of them just say they want to travel again. And I'm like, so you're succumbing to coercion. You don't actually think that you're in danger. You just admitted that you're cowardly and you're succumbing to coercion. Like, why don't you stand up for yourself? You only have one of these, dude.
well, that's the thing, you can't trade it in after you fuck it up. It's not like a. I always used I use this metaphor all the time about how if somebody told you you only had one car, you'd only, and that's it. If that shit breaks down, you're stuck with it. You would change the oil on time, you would take care of it, you do all those things. And our body is that one car, right? I mean, if it breaks down, you're stuck, limping around trying to get to your destination. And it boggles my mind how many people are just kind of careless with like what they put in their body. Like we talk, people talk about ingredients. People don't know what's in it. People don't know anything about it. And people are so willing to just inject themselves in their bloodstream, inject something that they don't know what it is. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, especially when we know that the average age of death is very high. What is it, in the like late 70s or something like that? I mean, I know it's constantly changing slightly, but it's really old. It's really, I remember there was a study too that came out of Italy last year about how no, it was early this year, about how the majority, some ridiculous high percentage of people who died of COVID last year were, they anticipated them dying in 2020 anyways because they're in such bad health.
Right.
So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, like if there's all this evidence that unhealthy people are dying of stuff, and when was that like a crisis? Oh,
Which,
unhealthy people are,
which does happen to living beings, by the way, in case you
yeah,
guys forgot. We do die. It's a
yeah,
thing.
we do, and things do kill people. I mean, there's all types of viruses and illnesses and
And buses.
buses, and and you talked about suicide. I mean, suicide, alcoholism. I mean, there's plenty of things that kill people. When people are like, oh, this is real, people die of it. Okay, people die of cancer, people die of a lot of different things. Like, do we stop the whole world? People die of hunger or not having clean water. It does, like, and that's not something that needs a test. That's not debatable on how we resolve that, what the solution is. We just have to get clean water and we can save them. And guess what? We don't. And thousands, I mean, I don't know what the number is. I remembered it, or I knew it before, but now I don't remember it. But I mean, thousands of people die every day because they don't have clean water, and we don't do jack shit about it. If we really care about
No,
deaths,
no, we just pollute more water.
yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, right? So I just had his name's something Phillips. Is it Stephen Phillips? I forgot. He wrote the book Giants, the Power Elite, and we talked about this, about how, like, the World Economic Forum and all, the Great Reset and all this stuff, and how, even
God, those people are losers. Ugh.
even, well, the crazy thing is they openly talk about what they're doing. Like, if anybody had the time to listen to their boring podcasts or press conferences or meetings or whatever, you would see that they're openly talking about this transition to transhumanism and I mean, just technology basically controlling all our lives. But the thing is, I just don't see it completely. Uh, it's not going to replace human interaction, or I hope it doesn't. And I have a hard time believing that it will, because there's something missing. Like, okay, as much as I love having the ability to have a Zoom call, if we were in person, we would have a much better conversation, because we could pick up on social cues, you could pick up on energy, you don't have to worry about video lag, interrupting each other. It's different. And I think that even though many of us have multiple social media accounts and they feel like, oh, I'm interacting with my friends all the time. There's people who are on social media 24/7 and feel lonely. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
It's not a replacement for being around people. It's not a replacement for actually being social. It's called social media. It's not really social. It doesn't.
Anti-social media.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And and then you get all these debates online where people who I know, I mean, I've put it out there on Facebook a few times where I would post something and it starts a little debate. I don't waste a whole lot of time debating people. I'll just send them something and then I'm like, hey, you know what? I have a podcast. Come on. I mean, we'll talk for a couple hours. I'm like, let's give these topics and discussions the time that it needs to.
Yeah.
And I always make the argument. I'm like, listen, I don't have a horse in the race. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a whatever. I'm a political atheist. I believe in something. I don't know what I believe in, but I there's every topic to me is different, and every topic I don't really care who backs that topic or who endorses that idea. I just care if the idea makes sense. Like if it happens that my opinions on the COVID vaccine is parallel with with other people maybe in the conservative movement or the libertarian movement, that they feel the same way, then yeah, on this topic we're on the same team and I'm okay with that. But too often people stop asking questions, and not just questions. I mean, it's more of a like internal thing, right? Like, how often do we stop and say, why do I believe this? Have I challenged my own ideas? Have I challenged my perspectives? Have I?
People even make fun of themselves for thinking about asking them that stuff now. They think it's like a weird flaky granola thing to do. And it's like, no, it's not. It's self-reflection, and you need to do that every day for balance. Like, anyway, that's my perception.
Well, self-reflection and self-correction, right? Like
Yeah.
you need to find out, like, okay, maybe I have, I see it with my kids all the time. They, I have a great, I love my kids, that we have a great relationship, and I feel like sometimes they respect me or like me so much that they just repeat what I say just because I said it. And I'm like, no, let's talk about it. Like, I don't want you to adopt this perspective or idea just because I said it. And you think I'm smart because you're only 6 and I seem really smart to a 6-year-old. But, it's because, like, I want you to actually question why I think this way, and then if you come to that conclusion, still it's important, and it's important to not adopt somebody else's opinions and perspectives just because you think that they're smart or you respect their opinions. So you're gonna, because there is this thing where it's like, who's saying it, right? Like, if Dr. says it, then you put it on a pedestal. If somebody else says it, then it's like, who the hell are they? I mean, look at Bill Gates, for example. He was going around everywhere. I'm like, why is his opinion respected? And it almost became this cultural thing where everybody just kind of accepted that this fat guy who or he's like skinny fat. He just has really skinny arms, and then a fat guy, the skinny fat people.
He's got visceral fat, which is a really sign of lack of health.
Yeah,
It's like the fat that surrounds your organs. Ugh. Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the guy that everybody's okay with getting health advice on. But somebody like you, who is a scientist and a professional surfer, I mean, anybody who's a professional in any sport, they're the ones who know much more about health than, I mean, you know how many doctors I look at and I'm like, you're giving advice on, I mean, that's why doctors are always so wrong
Yeah, I wonder that too.
about athletes. I mean, how often do you hear doctors tell athletes like you'll never walk again, you'll never play again, and they prove them wrong? Why? Because that doctor's not an athlete. He was a bookworm, and not in all cases, but in many cases they're bookworms, and they don't understand the power of the body, and not just the power of the body, the power of the body and mind, your willingness to get through something, your ability. I mean, we understand the placebo effect exists, it works, it's a thing. You know, that alone tells you the power of the mind. If you think you're getting better, you will get better. I've been taking this pre-workout in the morning, and I'm like, you know, it hasn't been giving me the, like, it's a new one and it has really clean ingredients, so I want to give it a try. If I'm putting something in my body on a regular basis, I want to make sure the ingredients are really clean. It's like I want to make sure that they come from natural products, or they're natural, they're not synthetic. You know, sometimes you get like the 5 hour energy shots. Those things, like, in theory, it's a great idea, like a little bit stimulant, caffeine, a whole bunch of B vitamins, which are good for you. The problem is it's all synthetic. The caffeine's synthetic, the vitamins are synthetic. So the way your body processes it, you don't feel that great. You know, you're better off taking just a B vitamin, you know, a high dosage a B vitamin. But I I thought there was caffeine in it. I thought there was a little bit of caffeine in it. And I was waking up in the morning and I'm like, yeah, this is way. Then today I'm like, I wonder if there's any. And I look at it and I'm like, there's no caffeine in it. I looked at the ingredients and I'm like, oh, I've convinced myself there was caffeine in there, or told myself there was caffeine in there. And I think that illusion actually made me have a little bit more energy in the morning, because I'm like, oh, this is like my cup of coffee in the morning for my my gym workout. Like, let me have this pre.
Or you reset your tolerance level, and now you don't need the caffeine for the energy.
Have you ever?
My tolerance level for caffeine is like, I can drink a pot and I'm still like,
take a nap?
yes, no, I do. I fall asleep after drinking coffee, but I do feel the stimulant effects. I gotta lay off. It's not good.
How much coffee do you do? So let's get into something
I
slightly.
mainline coffee.
You go through a lot of coffee daily?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like from the moment I wake up, I'm like, you know, I had one before. I mean, it's okay. I have an excuse. It's late. I'd normally be sleeping, so I needed it. But like, I just love coffee. It's like this black, you know, the coffee that I drink is a very, very finely ground Ethiopian Yirgacheffe blend, which is like extra caffeinated and kind of chocolatey. So it's like super silky and smooth, and I drink it black, of course. I don't have time for all that other stuff.
Honestly, coffee alone isn't bad for you. I mean, it's,
No. But too much is like, you know, you
it
can.
burns out your nerves, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm a ball of nerves anyway, so it's like probably. Yeah. Anyway.
I know people who are like, I don't drink coffee. I'm like, what do you mean you don't drink coffee?
I know, I don't get that either. Or they drink decaf. I'm like,
Yeah.
what planet are you on?
I mean, I'm the same way. Being Portuguese, I finish every meal with an espresso, regardless how late I'm eating, or you know, if I'm out to eat, I have espresso after my dinner, and I love like a good espresso, good coffee, and I drink it black. I mean, there's people that I know that say they like coffee, and then I'm like, that looks like,
and then they ruin it with some crap. I know.
yeah, and so many. I mean, you want to talk about moneymaker and market? I mean, caffeine is I mean, and what does that tell you about our lifestyles, right? That we require that much caffeine to get through a day. And so I had some gut issues a couple years ago, and
Ooh, that's not good with caffeine.
no, caffeine fucked me up pretty good. And I think it was because I'm constantly fasting, and I don't know if it was like the caffeine on an empty stomach. I would do it in the morning for my morning workout, and then at night I would play either basketball or soccer, or you know, usually it's one of those two. So I would have more caffeine on an empty stomach, and I wouldn't eat until after the very last thing of the day. Because
yeah, you must have had really bad acid reflux then, yeah?
No, well, all of a sudden, like I wasn't feeling. The crazy thing is, like, when people talk about the mind gut relationship and how it's connected, holy crap, is that true? Like when you have gut issues, like I was like as depressed as I ever been, and I'm like, why am I depressed? I mean, I know being sick sucks, but like it was like I didn't mentally feel like the same person. It was really weird. And then I started taking probiotics and prebiotics and enzymes and all that stuff. And but I went like when I would have caffeine, it would trigger it, and that was kind of like the key to like figuring out what the hell's going on. I'm like, okay, this must be gut related. So I went like 2-3 months without caffeine, and I'll tell you, man, like it took me like days, if not weeks, before I felt normal. Like
Yeah.
I didn't feel, I felt like I was in a daze and like I was in blurry land. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm like, I don't feel like myself. I have like brain fog and I just don't, I never felt like I woke up. But I have the same issue with too much sleep. If I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep or more, I am fucked. Like I feel like I cannot wake up. Like I'm just like constantly in that state of I just can't snap out of this. I feel like the
Yeah.
first couple hours of the day lasts all day. And then when
Yeah.
I get, like 6 hours of sleep, I'm like, okay, maybe sometimes I'm a little bit tired, but mentally, cognitively, I always feel like I'm sharp, like I'm there, like I'm tired, but I don't feel like I'm in this daze. What do you do? What's your like? Because obviously, being a surfer and being very physical, what's your diet like? What do you eat? How's your sleep?
Mm.
Like, is these all things that you monitor and
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I'm 46 now, going on 47. So I've tailored like, and it changes. It's very dynamic, especially when you get like my age, which is like sort of perimenopause, which means that apparently you go insane. No, I'm kidding, but you like hormonal changes. They do a lot of things to your body. I'm finding, and it's very dynamic. But I'm digressing. But yeah, I'm very, very, very habitual, as we talked about last time. I need a certain amount of sleep, but it doesn't have to be a duration. I'm a weird one. As long as it's on a sleep cycle, which is apparently 1.5 hours, if it's a multiple of that, I'm fine. Last night I got 4.5 hours sleep, which is like it's not enough, and I'm a little bit like psycho like today, like but like I'm a little like nerved up because you get that excitable phase when you're not well rested. So, but other than that, I mean, I did some good work today. I went surfing. I did everything that I normally do, so I'm functioning. That's the point. Um, but yeah, sleep is not something I'm very good at sacrificing. Like I remember in the times when we were allowed to travel, and a lot of these flights that you take are, they're like horrible. They're overnight and da 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 da, and it usually means a loss of sleep for a night, and that doesn't go so well for me. Like I need sleep a little bit anyway. And as for diet, yeah. Uh, I'm really, really fascinated by the concept of intermittent fasting because I absolutely believe in the extraordinary benefits from doing this, especially to your immune system. I basically do intermittent fasting every single day. So I try and stop foods at 6 p.m. Sometimes I don't succeed. My schedule is a bit like flippy floppy with all the meetings and stuff, but I try and stop at 6, and then like I sleep, and then I wake up, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 7 regularly. And then I work, and then I work out, and well, coffee, of course, coffee, water, work out. Sometimes my workouts are 4 hours. Sometimes they're even longer. Like I'm talking about going surfing when there are waves, and I go into the ketosis or the autophagy stage, where your stomach's going like rah, 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 rah. And it's like, yes, now we're talking. And it's not comfortable, but it's like, well, that passes, and then you're literally in this other state. And so yeah, that passes, and then So I'm generally eating by like 10 or 11. And that's not a big meal, but it's a very hearty meal. Like I eat a lot of good fats. Like I consume a lot of high energy stuff, like high fat, high protein, and lots of vegetables and fruits, but whatever's in season. I go with the flow of Mother Nature. So right now we have mangoes in season, and so that's basically like part of my day in the morning. Uh, and yeah, I think another thing a lot of people don't know about eating, their relationship to food, is that you probably don't need as much as you're consuming. Like I have like one good meal a day, and then I'm just eating for the rest of the day. Like whatever, like whenever you feel like eating, just do it. Uh, but for me, I do have this time when I like to fast, just so that my body, can do that thing, uh, to release toxins or whatever it's doing.
Well, you're definitely detox. I mean, when you eat a lot and you're in that coma state.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, and that reminds you how many resources are used to digesting food. And if
Yeah.
you're constantly eating, that means your resources are constantly dedicated to the food that you're consuming. And you think about, for thousands of years, we didn't have convenience stores or snacks. Like, we would at some point be in a state of ketosis because we would go long periods of time without eating. I've been doing the keto diet. It's more like a ketovore. I do mostly, meats and with a little bit of veggies and stuff like that. I try to cut out fruit. I used to love fruit. I still eat blueberries a little bit from time to time. But yeah, I mean, I eat once a day. I'm the same way. I eat once a day. Sometimes people are like, how are you still running off just, coffee and water? And I'm like, you get over that hump of being hungry, and once your body's in ketosis, you feel your best. Like and the crazy thing is, like, food doesn't have to control your life. Before, it was like, what am I going to have for breakfast? Oh, okay, breakfast is done, I better think about lunch. And then it's like lunch is done, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to have for dinner? Now it's like I eat once a day. The rest of the day can be dedicated to my work, my workout, doing whatever the hell I want to do or have to do. And my whole life doesn't have to revolve around eating. And that's kind of the way, the reason why it's called fat storage is because you're supposed to be storing it for when you don't have food. Well, if you constantly just consume food, you're just going to keep storing it. And like you said, there's a lot of good research about animals that eat the least, live the longest. And all these, we do consume way too much food. I remember I had,
Yeah.
there's a lot of other great benefits of it too. I had, what's his name? Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who wrote the book Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. He's either from...
What?
Yeah, you know that?
That's my theory. Somebody wrote a book on it?
Yes, I'll have to send you the podcast.
Oh my God. What? See, what was I talking about scooping? That's my idea. Everyone laughs at me when I say cancer is a metabolic disorder.
Well, I'm going to have to send you the podcast. Well, okay. you might be able to make it more famous than him, because he talked about, and it was actually Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, who he's kind of like the leading expert in the keto world. When he was on my show, he suggested Dr. Thomas Seyfried. Yeah, I mean, he has 150 peer-reviewed studies. I mean, he has a lot of good information showing that there's a benefit in the ketogenic diet, and also a benefit in fasting in regards to helping fight or even prevent disease. And nobody's interested in it. Like, nobody cares. I mean, we talked about this, how we've known for whatever 100 years or longer that glucose is a power energy source for cancer. And yet, if you have cancer, nobody says, how much glucose are you consuming? Like, how much sugar are you eating? They don't tell you that. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Why not at least attempt to starve the cancer cells of its energy source? It makes perfect sense, logical sense. What doesn't make logical sense is radiation causes cancer. Let's fight your cancer with some radiation. It's like, to me, that seems like an issue, and that's why you see people who actually are, cancer survivors, and they use chemo and radiation, and eventually later in life they end up getting other types of cancer because the way they were fighting the first time they had cancer ends up leading or causing other types of cancer. And I've had Dr. Brzezinski on my show. He was the Polish immigrant who had this battle with the FDA and the government. He was like considered like this medical genius until he found this thing called anti-neoplastones, which was having some success in fighting cancer. Then he goes to get it FDA approved, and the FDA brings him to court. And yeah, I mean, it's just a story of every doctor who goes against the grain, right? I mean, it's just like it's
yeah, well, you can't put a wrench in the program. They need to keep making people sick so they can sell them drugs. I mean, that's the medical industry now.
well,
It's a machine.
Dr.
It's a
Robert Malone
business.
talked about how when he was talking about his story of how they came up with the mRNA vaccine and that whole history of it, how the patent wars, like just how people were fighting over who gets credit for it. He
Yeah.
actually had like anxiety and depression and PTSD because there's all the stress of like universities fighting with one another, people fighting with one another in regards to like who gets the credit for this, because everybody wants their name on it, everybody wants to financially benefit from it. And he was just a scientist who was just interested in his work. And all the great minds historically, they haven't been motivated by money. I mean, they've been motivated by their work. I mean, we talked about music last time. I mean, the greatest musicians are the ones who are like, let me just write something that I love or I feel or I think is important. And those are the songs and artists that last forever. And then you get the hair bands, the 80s hair bands are like, let's write something that gets us laid and gets us money. And now we're not talking about Scorpion or Motley Crue that much. It's like it's just one of those things where it just money usually just complicates things, and it ends up, it's not a very good motivator. I know some people disagree with me. They say that money's a great motivator, and I'm like, kind of, it can motivate you a little bit, but I think the people who are really OCD about something, who are really gonna do, come up with this revolutionary idea, they're OCD not because they're gonna make money, but they're OCD because they really are passionate about that creative thing that they're doing.
Yeah, it comes back down to this eating thing we were just talking about with, I think it's all addiction shit. Like people get addicted to money, greed, food. I think it's all probably the same processes. And so that's what I think a lot of people should reevaluate in terms of their relationship with energy consumption. Uh, you know, it has to be, a balance between, there always has to be a balance between what you put in and what you take out. And homeostasis is always good, like to try and keep everything like balanced throughout, like for females, for example, in the month, because, we have a lot of fluctuations and things. So it really, it bodes well physiologically if you try and maintain as much balance as you can with routines and even like eating schedules or whatever. Having said that, though, I mean, I eat whatever I want whenever I want, because it's like there's eating is very, it is for pleasure, but luckily, I'm not somebody who's been like on the addiction spectrum on the other end with food. A lot of people are, and yeah, reassess the relationship with food. A lot of people should do that because yes, it's comforting, but I see it more as a tool to achieve the goal of feeling good. And sometimes you don't need it to feel good. Sometimes, like I have these weird days, and they seem to be cyclical, where I don't feel like eating, or I'm not hungry at all. And what I interpret that as is my body saying, you don't need to eat today, so don't feel bad about it. We're fine, And I'll function completely normally. I'll do my 2 workouts, and yeah, it's just paying attention to to your body in general, what it's telling, because everyone's different. That's the other thing. What's good for me is not good for you. It's like the universal truth of being an individual. Um, yeah, listen every day, and listen like cyclically, as the seasons go on, as Mother Nature cycles through, as like different foods come into season. Like I have an idea that there's probably a reason, like we co-evolved with a lot of the species of plants and even animals and fruits and all this stuff. So like, maybe we should be eating what's in season to be optimal human beings. um,
Well,
maybe in the winter time when, well, I don't know. We don't need to get too deep into that, but yeah, addiction's a big problem in humans, and that wraps around to this stupid phone crap too, which is probably the root of all the problems that we're facing now with this COVID crap, because everyone's obsessed with their devices and yak boxes, and not so obsessed with I don't know, spending time with their actual friends and being around nature, or even being alone. I mean, that's another thing that I think a lot of people need to do. So yeah, it's good to talk about addiction, because I don't even know if that's a taboo thing anymore. But like, we all have one. Everyone. It's like it's a part of our brains. There's like an addiction center, and
well,
it's
we're pleasure monkeys, right? I mean, we're
right. Yeah, exactly.
something gives you pleasure. I mean, do you know? We talked about this last time about Rat Park, the whole experiment.
No, but go on.
So I'm a big believer that is internal. It's not external, right? So growing up, a lot of times people
Thinking about Homer again. Sorry.
people would
Oh,
talk
where do we
about
from endorphin? Sorry.
pe- people would talk about how like, oh, this is a addictive substance, right? But it's like if coffee, we talked about people who don't even drink coffee, right? If coffee's so addictive where you need to drink it all day, why can somebody else drink it once and be like, it's not for me? Like if it has the exact same addictive properties, shouldn't people have some type of attraction to it, even if maybe it varies with individual? You should have some type of, because if it has addictive properties, how can somebody's be so disciplined that they can just completely ignore those addictive properties? So my point is, I think a lot of it's internal. And so there was a experiment where they had, I believe, mice, and they put cocaine or heroin or something in the water, and the mouse kept coming back to that water, drank so much that it ended up dying. And then your people in Canada, some people in Canada are like, these scientists are like, well, one thing we're not taking into consideration, that the cage has become a part of the experiment. And so what they did, they created this thing called Rat Park, right? Where they,
I know.
do you know about this experiment?
Yeah, but keep telling the story. It's nice.
Yeah, and then they basically recreated its own natural habitat where it could roam and whatnot. Basically recreated the same experiment. They came, they drank the water, and then they went back to playing and enjoying life, and they came to a conclusion that what was causing the mouse to come back to that water with the substance was the fact that it was unhappy. It was in a cage. And I think a lot of addiction is like that. I think what ends up happening is that if you have happiness in surfing, or happiness in being alone, and meditating, or listening to music, you're finding happiness somewhere. If you have somebody where they don't have any place for happiness, and this substance gives them fills that emptiness, and fills that spot where they're like, I'm looking for something, for some type of fulfillment or happiness, then they're going to keep going back to it. They're that mouse that keeps going back to that water because they have nowhere else to find happiness. So I think too often we've been looking at addiction completely wrong. We keep blaming the substance, and not blaming the society that we've built, this world that we have built. Because the reason why that's happening is because people are unhappy. We talked about how how many people need caffeinated drinks? I mean, energy drinks are a huge market. Coffee is a
Oh
huge.
yeah, right.
You go next to a or drive by a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts in the morning. They have lines out the. I mean, there's lines everywhere. I mean, there's a line of cars because we live in this stressful life that we just need all this caffeine just to get through it because we're not getting enough sleep, we're not getting enough nutrition, and I just feel like the mental stress that our everyday lives usually entail, we're not designed for that yet, or we haven't adapted to that yet. We have, hundreds and thousands of years of physical stress, right? I mean, that's why we feel our best when we're doing it, because we had to collect food, we had to create shelter. I mean, that's the way we lived forever. We didn't, now this mental stress, like it takes a beating, not just on you mentally, but physically. You have a really stressful day, you get home and you sit on the couch, it's like, I don't feel like doing anything, even though I haven't physically done anything. And it's like,
Yeah.
why is that? It's same thing with long drives. I had to drive a hour today after work, and I'm more tired after that drive than I am
Yeah.
working all day. It's like your body just shuts down. It's like a body emotion stays in motion, and a body, isolated, sitting still, seated, it's going to want to keep doing that. You just like, it doesn't want to waste resources. It's like, well, if you're not doing jack shit, I'm not going to give you any energy to do something because you're not utilizing it. So it's it really, we almost have to rethink our whole life. It's wild because we kept creating tools, and we kept creating more efficient ways of hunting and gathering, and transportation keeps getting better for the purpose of having like more free time, right? We're supposed to have more free time because it takes less time to kill something and get and get food. It takes less time to get A to B, and now we just still have less and less free time. And even though we have all this technology that's supposed to simplify our lives and make things easier, it just complicates our lives. And that's why I think yoga and meditation, and people, even like in Massachusetts where I live, there's IPAs have gotten really popular. People are drinking bourbons, people are getting the cigars at a younger age. And I think a lot of that has to do with like, the more we're detached from these simple things and enjoying these simple things, and a lot of times social things, because you do them in groups and you're together, the more we realize we need them, because I think people are like, oh wow, this is really fun, because the rest of my life I'm not paying attention to smells and aromas and these type of things, or I'm not distracted and just having a conversation with somebody. That's why, like, even this podcast, or when I get together with my friends and I just have a glass of bourbon and have a cigar, like the whole process of it is therapy to me, because it's like, it gives me an opportunity to lay out some of my ideas. Gives me opportunity to consume some new ideas and kind of figure that all out, because if not, we're just like constantly in motion. We don't have any time to self-reflect and analyze what we're doing or why we're doing it. It's really easy. That's why I think a lot of these guys who are CEOs of these big companies, or they're really powerful politicians, they can completely ignore their morals because they're so busy. Their phone's constantly going off. They have this meeting, they have this press conference, they have to go here, they have to go there, they have all these things they have to remember to do, and people they have to talk to, that they never spend a moment to be like, okay, maybe I'm not a good human being. Maybe, maybe what I'm doing, I might regret, neglecting my kids or my wife or my husband or my whatever. And this focus of power and money is one day going to be my biggest regret, just focusing on that and neglecting everything else. And that's why I love meeting like really old people that are like, they don't give a fuck anymore, and they're just like, they don't care about popularity, they don't care about being the coolest person or being the smartest person in the room. They're just very comfortable in their own skin, and they're looking at life almost as like, they're almost looking back at it, right? Like life is a memory.
Yeah,
and
that's a nice way to look at it.
yeah, and they're reflecting on it, and so you get a really interesting perspective on like, okay, most of us will get there one day. We'll look back and we'll have regrets if we work too much, and we have regrets if we, focus on all the wrong things. And you can make more money, you can't make more time. It's
Yeah.
and really the only thing that outlasts our physical bodies is our memories, and what people, the way people discuss who we were as individuals and who we were in their lives, and maybe lessons that they learned from us, or memories that we created together, that outlasts our physical bodies. And so you can spend all this time consuming ones and zeros, but if you're an a-hole when you're gone, like, that's how people are going to remember you, as being an a-hole.
Or they just won't remember you.
Yeah, very, very good point.
My old, I talked to all the old crowd. Some of them have been here since they were little people, in this neighborhood that I moved to a couple of years ago. And one of them told me, I'm telling you this because I'm also very fond of my elders. And so he told me a story about how when he was younger, maybe a little less than me, I forgot to ask him what year this was, because it was really amazing to hear. Like this place where I go surfing is like right there, and it's there's a beautiful natural reef which sits about I don't know, on average, say 4 or 5 feet under the water level, and there are these rock barricades that are like constructed by humans, like fake rock walls to kind of retain the sand, and keep the water from like overflowing onto the sidewalk when storms come. So anyway, it's artificial. But back in the day, when it wasn't artificial and just a natural reef kind of like met with the land, this guy said when he was younger, you'd step out into the water where we all go now, and an octopus would come and grab your leg, because there's so many octopuses. And I'm like, what? Because I asked him about octopuses, because he goes snorkeling every day, and he says the fish populations are all starting to become restored, and different species are coming back because they're actually enforcing like overfishing laws here finally. So I asked him, do you ever see octopuses? And he's like, no, not anymore. And so he told me this story. It was probably a couple decades ago, where you couldn't even put your foot in the water. You'd get like a bear hug from an octopus, and they were big. So it was a really nice story to hear, and it really made me smile. It's like these genuine stories that it's like most people you walk by wouldn't understand why it makes me smile to hear about octopuses. But it was an amazing thing. It's like, it's kind of sad too, because I mean they're not there anymore because of the ecological destruction and octopusing. I don't know what fishing for octopus is called. Octopusing, that's okay. But anyway, yeah, it was really nice. That was my my old man interaction story for the night.
But I remember this comedian, I don't know if it was Ferguson. Remember that guy used to have a late night show? I think he was Irish, right? Or Scottish. He was big in the US. Something Ferguson. I think it was him who was, there's a clip of him talking about how back in the day we used to look up to our elders, right? Like we would talk to them and hear their stories and try to consume some of their wisdom and hear their life experiences. And then there was this change in society where now we celebrate being young and reckless, and everybody wants to look young and be young and not give a F. And I mean, and I think there's some benefit in that, and like just, I guess not giving a F, I think sometimes we give too many Fs, and we we care about what people think or what people say, and that pure pressure of why haven't you been vaccinated? Well, like that. You see it with the vaccine debate. And just how many people got it just because they were sick of people asking. I know people that are like, I think I'm just going to get it. Everybody at work keeps.
That's not a good reason.
No,
God damn.
I know, and but it is pure. It's
These are
precedent.
the people. There's like, that thing we used to say, everybody knows when you're young, like, if your best friend jumped off of a building, would you do it too? And it's like everybody says, well, of course not. But it's like everybody has. It's like the oldest, like, what do you call that? It's not an anecdote. It's the oldest, you know what I mean? It's like, what happened? Why did everyone jump off the building? There's nothing down there except maybe destruction.
But you're right. I mean, people will just follow the herd. It's groupthink. It's
Yeah.
it,
What
it,
the hell is that group thing? We need some psychiatrists and psychologists on this case. Like I am not one of those. I'd love to be qualified as one of them, but I'm not. I can come up with my ideas all I want, but I want the real, the people who have studied the books and the history and achieved, some kind of status in this fields to like comment on what the hell is going on, because it's like, besides being fascinating from like I'm absolutely mortified point of view, it's inexplicable to me. Like, what happened to people? I don't get it. It's like, I can almost understand if this had all happened in the context of, say, a pill that has a half life. Okay? So you take the pill and maybe it's going to damage you, maybe it's not. But it's not going to be long lasting because it does have a half life. Let's just say they say there's a half life of, I don't know, 48 hours or something. So, like, I can almost understand how people would would jump more easily to that, because it's not as risky. But I how can people not be? Oh, we're not Facebook friends. Okay, so I have to tell you what I posted the other day. I have these like things that come to me during my walks. So the other day I was walking and the thoughts were coming in, and all of a sudden that droid, the black sphere droid, I can't remember, the Interrobot 101 or whatever the hell it was from Star Wars. Did you see Star Wars?
no, I was I was not a.
Wow. Okay, so I have to tell you. So that's so funny. So I saw Star Wars when I was a little girl. It was like, I think the very first movie I saw in a theater. My uncle took me, if I'm remembering correctly. And so it's kind of this classic galactic space battle thing, and there's heroes, and one of the heroes is a heroine. She's a princess, and she gets captured by Darth Vader, who's like this Sith Lord evil guy who speaks through a mask. And so he's trying to get information from her because she's actually a rebel spy, and she got some plans about this new battle station that the bad guys were building. And there's a vulnerability that she knows about, that if she gets to the Rebel Alliance, they can potentially destroy their new battle station. So he needs to get those plans so that she can't pass it on to the Rebel Alliance. So the way that he does this, besides capturing her and putting her in a cell, is he has this. There's this scene where he comes in and he's like, I need there's something about those plans. And then they pan out eventually in the scene to this black sphere that's floating, and it has these tools attached to it, and this little arm with like a syringe and a needle. So inside the needle is something. It's probably a truth serum, because he says, I will get that information. So it leaves you with this, like, George Lucas was a genius, because he played upon this inherent fear that just about everybody has, this being jabbed with metal and being injected with something. And I'm a weird person. I don't mind being jabbed by needles when things are taken out, but what I do mind is when things are put in. I feel like there's not enough room. So anyway, I was thinking about that. I'm like, wow, that's really relevant to understanding, to trying to understand what's going on here, because everybody, almost everybody knows about this scene, and everybody was frightened when they were little when they saw that, because of the association with the needle and the pulling of the truth and the forcing of the injection and the cold needle and all of this stuff. And so my question to myself was, why is there cognitive dissonance on this subject? Why is it even possible for anyone to question why somebody would choose not to get these injections if it wasn't necessary for them? And it's not necessary for anyone who's young and healthy. Why is it even being talked about, this forced vaccination, these mandates? Why is this being talked about? It doesn't make sense to me, because it challenges this whole idea of human nature, which makes me believe that something in the human minds has been hijacked. I mean, for reals, there's something not adding up here. Everyone should be facing this with, of course I understand why somebody wouldn't opt into that. You know, needles suck. We don't know what's in it. Maybe they don't realize that that's something they should be concerned about, but we don't know what's in it. And we never will, because that information is not transparently offered. So yeah, anyway, sorry, that was long, but I was like, wow, I gotta write this down, because I don't get it. I mean, it's like, it's one of those biggest fears in many, many, many people, kind of fears, like spiders, you know? It's like all of a sudden they said, okay, everyone has to be locked in a room full of spiders now, because there's a deadly virus and this is the cure. And then all of a sudden everyone was like, okay, I'll get locked in a room full of deadly spiders. And then for the rest of the people who are like, no, I can't do that. You know, this is an example of, you know, having a phobia about it, but you know, the message is the same, I suppose. But it's like, you can't force someone into, I don't get it. I don't get why anyone would ever think they have the right to tell another person what to do with their body. I guess that's what it boils down to. It's so bizarre, especially when you're talking about an injection. Maybe that's my point. It's like, it's so visceral, like, and it's so obvious that that's absolutely not something that should ever freaking happen. You can't mandate that shit. You can't. Sorry. That was my rant. They're doing it, but they can't. So I don't know how those two things are going to resolve themselves.
Do you think it's because we've been conditioned to believe that vaccines are not in this this situation, but historically they've prevented and so many diseases, and they've cured and helped so many people? That's the reason why people have been conditioned to believe that vaccines are always good.
Well, I in this context, I think we have the problem because everyone's calling it a vaccine and it's not. So it's tied to that, yes, but and I'm going to go into like murky waters right here, but I don't care anymore. Okay, for those of you who don't know, I am a viral immunologist. I study pathogenic viruses because I really like viruses. It's like, yeah, it's a weird thing, but ever since I was like as old as I can remember, microbes and especially these weird strands of RNA and DNA are just like, what the hell? How freaking fascinating is that? So this is what I do. And part of, like, anybody who does immunology, I did a degree in immunology, not a course. So you learn about the immune system when you do that and how it functions. And so you also learn about how vaccines work. So it stems from the concept of inoculation and cowpox. And anyway, there's a beautiful story associated with this. And so conceptually, what I'm trying to say is inoculation is a beautiful idea. It's a fantastic concept. The idea of giving yourself a low level, a kind of innocuous infection and mounting an immune response where those components of your immune response can recognize factors in very pathogenic species, for example, because of, cross reactivity, I suppose I can call it. That's the concept. You get something weak and you gain the ability to mount an immune response against something really bad. So you end up not getting sick. It's a beautiful concept, and it borrows from how the immune system works anyway, because you have a primary infection and then a secondary infection based on immunological memory. But anyway, I don't need to go into that. So the reason I said that is because I am a devout believer in vaccination. I am fully vaccinated against most things most people don't even know about. When I did my first European travels and I knew I was going a little bit south where there was yellow fever, I got everything you didn't even need to get. So like I am not opposed to vaccination. So I have two big guffs with the new lexicon that's being used regularly, like toilet paper by everyone. These things associated with COVID, these products are not vaccines. First of all, there's something else. And what was my other thought? Oh, Jesus Christ, my memory. What was the other thing? Lexicon, words, what was I about to say? Woo. Wow, I really don't remember. The misuse of the word vaccine, that was one, and the misuse of the word... Wow, I totally lost my thought. Anyway, so I guess I'll just follow through with what I was ranting about. These products are different from vaccines because traditional vaccines do rely on the concept of inoculation with a weaker or killed strain of a pathogen. Sometimes they're carried by other viruses that we mount immune responses to, but that don't make us sick. These are not that. These are mRNA, which is messenger RNA, which is the coding material for proteins, wrapped up in lipid nanoparticles with a bunch of other stuff. It's a totally different thing. And again, conceptually, I think this is a beautiful idea. I really do. From a scientific point of view, it's brilliant. But the problem is, and this is the other reason why I don't consider these vaccines, is that traditional vaccines have to go through a 10 to 15 year, I don't know if you want to call it a vetting process, but they have to go through a number of clinical trials, animals and humans and And the reason for this is to make sure that when you put them into the population, that they're efficacious, that they work, and that they're safe. So these things we didn't go through that with these things. There's zero long-term data. Everybody knows they were rushed. This is not a myth, it's a fact. They were rushed, and they shouldn't have been. The mRNA in the Pfizer and the Moderna products encode what we're calling the spike protein, which is the sticky outy bit from the SARS virus. And this itself is pretty bad, as we're finding out in slowly as the literature is coming together. So in no way, shape, or form are these things anywhere remotely related to what I would call a traditional vaccine. Now, this is my take on this. Not everybody who like vaccinologists might completely disagree with me. It's like, no, they're vaccines. They're meant to induce an immune response, a weak course of symptoms, so that when you are challenged with the real virus, you're going to mount a response. And that is the design idea. But that's not what's happening, as anybody who's been following what's happening with the Delta variant can confirm. I really wish I could remember what I was trying to say about the other word, the lexicon. It was important. The misuse of words. Anyway, that's rampant. The misuse of words in all of this.
When changing.
Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a rant about the.
Well, and the changing of definitions, right? Herd immunity is now only by vaccination. There's no more herd immunity by, or natural herd immunity. Now getting immunity via actually being exposed to the virus isn't as good as the vaccine. Now they're kind of pushing that narrative a little bit too, where it's just like, oh, if you get COVID, then the chance, you only have immunity for 180 days or something like that. And it's just like, it's nonsense. And
it is nonsense.
I'd look
it's been shown like that the response is robust and long lasting, and nothing will ever beat innate immunity. And the fact that kids were doing well is proof positive that we were all going to be doing okay if we had left this alone, because it kind of shows that we have some kind of cross reactivity anyway. Like, we're mounting good innate responses. Like, NK cells are really powerful guys, and they're very important. And in most people, they're fully functional. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just so clearly about profiteering again. And it's like, this isn't like, it's not rocket science. I mean, you just have to like understand that this is a business. Vaccine production is a business. And if you go onto the internet and you look up the birth of public health itself, like, I had to do this the other day because I'm writing a paper on pharmacovigilance, and it's like, wait now, what the hell is public health? And like, where did it come from? Who conceptualized this? I'm gonna leave that to you guys to find out. You might be surprised. I wasn't. Yeah, I mean, it's nice that people kind of naively believe that, these public health policies are designed to keep the public safe. And maybe some people actually do, they subscribe to that. But ultimately, if you're ignoring, on the subject of vaccines in general, like vaccine induced damage, if you're ignoring the fact that that even exists, that it's a possibility that vaccines can cause damage, long-lasting damage or death, for example. I'm not just talking about the COVID shit. I'm talking about, like, all the moms who have vaccine-injured children, all the dads who have vaccine-injured children. If you're ignoring that shit, then I lost my thought again. It's just, yeah, I don't know. Everything is backwards. It's not about public health. It's not about protecting people. It's not about safety. It's about keeping programs going, and it's about profiteering. And It's so freaking sad. And I think if you don't understand that, you're really being naive. I'm not trying to insult anyone. It's just, you know, I don't know. I know too much about this crap. I didn't want to. I didn't want this to be my life now, like only fucking, always thinking about vaccines. I don't care anymore. I just want to get back to like doing research, transporter molecules or something. But yeah, I don't know.
But isn't that also a part of the problem a little bit, right? Is while many people were going on with their everyday lives, vaccine companies, big pharma, the elite, for lack of a better term, they're constantly trying to find ways to profit and take over our lives and gather more power and money. And then while I've said this before on the show about how all these issues got to the point where they became so important and so relevant because it got in your personal life, but all these issues existed prior to 2020. Like Dr. Brzezinski I talked about, his videos, his documentary is banned on different platforms. So many what was her name, Dr. Susan Dowd, they did a documentary called The Big Secret, The Big Lie, The Big Secret, one of the two. And it was about the history of medicine and how, homeopathic medicine was accepted as medicine at one point, and natural remedies was accepted as medicine. And then it goes into the AMA and how they kind of changed what, they looked at as medicine, and the Rockefellers and all this stuff. And that documentary gets pulled off Amazon Prime. You have Del Bigtree's Vax documentary, which isn't even a specifically anti-vax documentary. It's more about that specific story with Dr. Brian Hooker, who's been on my show. Dr. Brian Hooker had a vaccine injured child. He was interested in, just the research behind vaccines. And
we have a visitor.
We do. That's
Hello.
Well, the chances of this video staying on YouTube just increase because YouTube is only into cat videos. They're not.
He's famous. This is why people watch my podcast, because they're waiting for him to come on. Yeah, every time. This is Checkpoint.
Well, that's the name of the cat. Is Checkpoint?
Yeah. He's the generator of all the good ideas. I do nothing. It's all him.
He gets all
right?
Is it just you two who live together?
No, I live with my partner too.
Oh, nice.
But luckily, my cat loves him. So.
It's funny. A lot of dog people hate cats, but they're easier to take care of than dogs. They require less work.
Oh yeah, of course. They just poop in a box, and you feed them once a day and give them lots of love.
But the argument is, are they as loyal as dogs, right?
Oh my, look at this thing. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to call you a thing. Like, he's attached to me if I'm anywhere, if I'm home. Yes,
your neighbor puts out milk. Will you ever see that cat again?
He's not really a milk guy, and he's kind of terrified of everything. So he doesn't mind just being contained in our place. It's a pretty big apartment, so he has a lot of room. Yeah, yep. He gets very jealous when I go on these calls. It's like giving me the look. And when I start typing on my tablet, especially when I talk to my best friend, he gets pretty mad. He's giving me the look. You're freaking me out, man.
So
just gonna back up a bit.
What's interesting is because of your interest in vaccines and the way they work and the whole idea of getting your body to just be better prepared to fight a disease. In theory, it makes sense, but obviously you're aware of like the vaccine courts in the 80s and how vaccines have increased since then. Do you think people are getting over vaccinated now? I know you said
yes.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt about that. I mean, if you just kind of look at it this way, like when I was young, I got I got measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria. I don't know. I got like two or three. A couple of them were like the multi ones.
Like they're multivitamins, the multi ones.
Yeah. So like, we got a few and that was, that was a part of childhood. And every now and then, you'd have to get a booster. I was always told, like, if I step on a rusty nail, I should get a tetanus booster. And I've actually had a couple of tetanus boosters in my life. There he goes. And yeah, that's your tail. That's your tail. You're not finished. You're not finished.
So in other words, not in obviously there's a necessity or there's a place for them, right? Obviously.
Oh yeah. Like to continue the thought, like there's this there's this crazy picture of a little doll, like some person's little doll, and it has a number of needles, like the number of needles that a baby like less than 18 months would have had up until that point in their life. And it's insane. It looks like a fucking like voodoo doll.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but if you get vaccinated or if they when they combine these vaccines, I mean, they don't test them, or when they get approved, they don't get approved together, do they? Like the MMR vaccine, right? They don't get it approved with all three together.
I don't think so, but don't quote me on that. Andy Wakefield would know the answer to that.
He's actually coming on the show later this month, I think.
Hey, yeah. Excellent. Oh, hero.
He's awesome just because, I mean, his story, that's another, the Vax documentary and the Andy Wakefield story are two things that people have, they think they understand, they think they know the story, and it's like, no, you actually don't. Like the Vax documentary isn't an anti-vax documentary. It's more of a CD whistleblower documentary. And then the Andy Wakefield story, he had nothing to do with vaccines prior to, him being kind of accidentally thrown in the whole, in the whole debate.
A gastroenterologist with integrity.
Yeah, who just found this weird link that he thought like, okay, maybe there's something here, maybe there isn't, and all.
Which is the beauty. This is science, questioning and finding patterns. It's like that's the process. And if you're honest, like he was, you don't hide your shit because it goes against what some assholes are telling you. You present it because that's why we're doing this. We're doing this to improve the quality of life. Jackasses, that's why we're doing this.
2020 also made me very skeptical. So with something that I hear a lot in the alternative media community when people say things like, oh, not all vaccines are bad. Look at polio. Look at all these things that don't exist because of the vaccine. I would always look at both sides of the argument. I'm like, maybe, there are some examples of diseases that, thanks to vaccines, we've eliminated or aren't of a huge threat to humanity. But and then 2020 happened, and you saw how the media and the TV and everything gave all the credit to the vaccine, the numbers going down, everything was, and I'm like, okay, now looking back historically, you see how easy it would be for herd immunity to actually be the thing that caused the numbers to decrease, but yet you could easily give all the credit to the vaccines. And so now I'm skeptical of every disease, and like, okay, is there any really good concrete evidence of a disease that, thanks to vaccines, it wasn't a threat? Because again, like I've said on the show, one day, if people look back at 2020, if you're a child and you're growing up in this crazy time, and you're like, let me do some research on like what was going on then, because I was confused, or I saw my parents stressed or whatever, and let me or maybe you weren't alive at this time and you want to historically go back and see what happened in 2020, all the news articles are going to say that the vaccine resolved the issue. And even though that's not the case at all. So it makes you wonder, like, well, obviously, this goes into the whole other discussion about, how much of history is actually, accurate or it's all perspective. It's all who's writing it. If they have a bias, if they have a narrative that they're pushing. Yeah, this is getting deep. This is like, well, can we
No,
believe?
no, I'm just thinking about, like, the only thing I could say is, and I hate admitting this to myself, I don't care about admitting it to everyone, it's harder to admit to yourself, is that it's making me question what I've spent like 30 years, like, kind of revolving my life around. I mean, because, there is this intertwining between, immune response pathogens. I mean, vaccines are just kind of like that faked out, but it's like, it is making me wonder, because there are some things you once you learn them, you can use like a combination of the tools that you've acquired from, like, a lifelong journey of studying, and your intuition, and all sorts of things, your guides, your friends, whatever, combine it all. And you kind of just know sometimes when you've learned something that's truthful, and you kind of, once you get there, you can't backtrack, and it changes you sometimes when you find out something that you really have trouble believing, but you kind of have to force yourself to. There are a lot of freaking liars on the go right now. There's a lot of bad shit going on. There's a lot of bad people doing bad things. That's just a reality. And so, yeah, I can't say anything to anything specific, but since we're talking about Vaxxed, I've seen that movie like 2,000 times. I freaking love it.
Dr.
I
Brown.
didn't know that story until they told it. And I'm so grateful to know it. And there's absolutely not one shred of me that doesn't fully believe that that's pretty much exactly what went down.
Well, they have recorded conversations with
Yeah,
William Thompson. I mean,
exactly.
Dr.
So, and he's not incentivized to, like, what's his incentive for doing this? Ruining his own life? Yeah, it's a good incentive, like, yeah. So I didn't know that about the MMR, and that's why that's such a beautiful example of doing good science, because whether or not they were aware, which, clearly they were aware that something shitty was up. The fact that there was a choice to keep using the single-use products, I mean, it's really malevolent, and you kind of have, I bet there are parents out there, they haven't seen the movie, or they're still unaware of this truth, and they're still giving the triple, MMR product because their doctors are saying it's safe. And I'm sure there are still children getting injured and dying. It made me wonder about this whole thing about SIDS. I'm like, all my life I've wondered, what the fuck is that? Babies dying in their cribs? Is that a thing?
There's so many cases we think alike. When I became a parent, I thought it was the most ridiculous thing. I remember people just talking about it.
So weird.
Yeah, people were like, "Oh, they passed away of SIDS." I'm like, "Well, what the fuck's SIDS?" Oh, sudden, what?
Infant death syndrome, but like,
And I'm like, wait.
why?
I'm like, "Oh, what causes it?" "Oh, we don't know." I'm like, so in other words, when a child dies of something you're unaware of what killed it, you just made up a term for that. So
Right, like, we don't know, like, that. What is that exactly? Like, I'm sorry, we have to know why.
well,
And there is an explanation.
Well, the SIDS, somebody sent me a graph. So when you do a podcast like mine, people send you a lot of crazy shit. But send me a graph of SIDS and how it went up last year and or was it this year? I don't know, one or two. And I haven't had a chance to look into it to see if it was accurate. But if there is a increase, I mean,
It went up or down
it went up.
in 2020 or 2021?
No, I'm gonna have to read. Maybe I should have thought this out better before I shared it. But it's
It's really important because I would think that the rates went down in 2021.
I would think it might go up because of shedding or the parents having,
Ooh.
you know,
I was thinking down because fewer parents were doing the childhood vaccination schedule because of the
you know what?
debauchery in the
I think you're
hospitals.
right now that you say that. I actually think it did go down because I think that's exactly what I thought. I'm like, well, why would it go down? Oh, less kids were going to the pediatrician and getting vaccinated. You're right.
I mean, assuming that that's why, but that's the thing. It's like, this is part of this whole line of questioning that I've had to start this journey on. It's like, I never, ever, ever, ever in a million years would have not been that person saying, you're dumb. Of course, that's not connected. But hey, maybe it is. And it's kind of unscientific to just say, there's no causation because we said so. It's like, that's dumb, because in a lot of cases there is causation, and it doesn't matter if you can prove it, like explicitly, even though I can now. I have a way, by the way. You guys are going to be blown away when my next paper comes out. Yeah, go Jess.
And that's like,
Wow, look at my armpit. It's like 40 degrees here every day.
don't listen to this episode, please. People, watch this episode, and but it's like having a child who died of a peanut butter allergy, and then you gave them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, they died, and then you telling people like, I think the peanut butter killed my kid, and people like, my kid has peanut butter and jelly all the time, nothing ever happens to him. It's like,
that's a beautiful analogy. That's beautiful. Exactly. Your kid has an allergy, and that's pretty much how it works. I mean, some people are going to get screwed by this shit for whatever reason, and some people aren't. And that's the thing. It's like, with these products that we're seeing now, I just showed you this plot of the adverse events. And by the way, people, there are like thousands and thousands and thousands of types of adverse events. It's not just the counts. We're talking from a cough to death and everything in between. And we won't even get started on autoimmune shit. And I'm not talking just about reactivation of existing autoimmune conditions. I'm talking about development of new ones, like autoimmune myocarditis. That's going to be in my next paper. So,
and Dr. Malone looked like he was very intrigued with the conversation about antibody dependent enhancement and ADE, and that's another thing. That's another thing, and the fact you're hearing conversations about people saying a not very good vaccine could cause a stronger strain of the virus or a change in the virus. I mean, there's all these other weird, it literally, humanity has become a experiment, and we're a experiment. And we, that's why I think people got a little, some of the people on the show are like, wait, how can you recommend this vaccine to anybody when we have zero long-term studies? And again, he's been in this world his whole life. Maybe a little bit he's having the same internal dilemmas that you're having, in regards to.
There's no doubt. And I was going to say that, like, Robert is like, from what I know of him, I don't know him that well yet, but he's one of the old school, like hardcore, like people in the field. I mean, there's a lot of, I was going to say us. I guess, I suppose I'm one. I don't put myself in that category because they're upper echelon in my books. I'm just like someone who's like, tagging along for the ride, even though I am old. So like I really, really, really respect the guy, like out the yin yang, for facing himself, because you can almost, when you talk to him, you can almost see him going through a struggle as he's existing. Because this indoctrination, I'm telling you, like in the academic umbrella, and I said, I mean this, I've only ever been on the outskirts. I've never really been deep. I'm not a professor. I've never like had any huge responsibilities. Like I'm not a chair at an institute or anything like that, because I didn't want to be. I didn't want the responsibility, but like the indoctrination is so strong, and it's a real thing. It's like, it's not just about your funding comes from this place, so you have to do what they want. It's almost like a religion. Like you do things a certain way, you think a certain way. We all follow the same, we all read the same textbooks when we were studying immunology. Like they're like the Bibles to us. Mathematicians are the same way. Like, and you know, everyone has. Anyway, it's very. It's like it's full of character, and it's full of like values, and once you establish those values, and once you establish, I hate to say the word belief, but I don't know how else to call it. Like when you read an immunology textbook and you adopt the ideas into your brain about how T cells come about, for example, like, I'm not saying that that's ever going to change, but immunology is one of the fields when everything is changing every day. And all the textbooks that I used to study are probably completely obsolete. So, but you have to hold on to some hardcore, like, definite stuff, like that's not going to change no matter how, you know, dynamic the field is.
But
so it's like,
be open to change, right? Like shouldn't we also understand that nothing should be definite?
yeah, but it's like, yes, but you also need a good foundation. Like I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Like my brain is taking me to my math degree, which was the first one. And I mean, it's like everything was very layered. Course to course and class to class. Like if you missed a class, you lost the semester. So you had to be in every class so that you could extend what you learned in one class to the next class, so that you built this like really solid foundation about how like numerical analysis works, for example, or how to write a system of differential equations, so that you could use that to like examine how a virally infected human, you know, is doing. So it's like, maybe I'm digressing a little bit. I'm trying to think of like the core kind of foundation stuff that you, even though the field might be changing, you kind of have to accept as like dogma, like the central dogma or tenet, whichever word you want to use, of biochemistry, where you have, you know, your RNA, DNA to mRNA to protein. It's like, you kind of have to accept that. You're right, though. Maybe a better way to say it is like,
I just feel like all dogmas can be dangerous, right? Like, and
you're right. You are right. That's why I'm pausing here, because I agree with you. As I'm saying it, it's like, even though we all accept that this is how it is, I mean, this is how it is now. And with a lot of things, as we've been shown as time evolves, it's like what once was accepted as, you know, hardcore Bible talk it's not the way it actually was at all. Maybe it's a perceptual thing. I don't know.
Well, it's hard to. I mean, when we did a Union of Unwanted on the flat Earth, we did a whole episode on it.
I was just thinking that.
That's kind of the argument that they make to everybody else. The reason why other people have a hard time accepting it is because it shatters your worldview. You have been brainwashed, they would look at it as brainwashed
Yeah.
to inherit. You inherit this idea that this is the way the world works. This is how the world's round, and this is how planets, this is how space looks, and this is where planets are, and here's the sun, and we go around the sun, and all this stuff, and yet, they're like, that's why some people struggle to even entertain the idea, right? And that's why I don't. There's no idea I won't even that I'll dismiss right away. It's always like, okay, let me look into it. Let me see. I'm like, I could be wrong. I mean, I could be stuck in some dogma that I've been conditioned to believe this is the way the world works. I mean, I have kids. If I told them that the sky is purple as children, and every single day I tell them the sky's purple, and I'll give them reasons why the sky's purple, they're gonna grow up believing the sky's purple. And then when somebody's like, hey, motherfucker, you've been lied to, the sky's blue, and they'll be like, what? Like their whole world shatters. And so but I understand that, like, in your field of work, or really, I guess, to understand anything, like, you have to accept some type of information at that point to be true, right? Because it goes into that whole debate about, like, what's reality, what's true.
You have to at least assume that it's true, maybe not accept, but like, that's how mathematical proofs work. Like, you have to make assumptions, you have to assume that they're true in order to, like, build on that to build up a proof. So it's just like that.
Yeah, it's but I guess, like you said, the hard part is, like, these books are your Bibles. You accept them as as truth, and then one day, if somebody questions those books, your first instinct would be to
Defend the book.
Yeah, defend the book.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I think you're the one who brought it up earlier in the show. People don't want to be wrong, right? And people, you're having a conversation with them, they, a lot of times, even if you make a really good logical point, or even if you, like, I got them, like, I just made a really good point, that they can't defend this, they can't defend their perspective anymore, they still will. And because a lot of times, especially if it's in some way going against the way they look at the world, their first, it's like that saying, it's easier to trick somebody than convince them they've been tricked. They get this idea that, like, okay, I have to defend, like, it's, even if they're making a point, like, I'm resisting because I don't want to believe that I'm wrong. I don't want to believe that my worldview is incorrect. And that ego and that part of your brain, it's hard to know if that's getting in the way of the way you're perceiving information, because
it's so true.
Yeah, but this also,
I ask myself, it's like, I actually ask myself, how much is your ego involved here? You can usually notice emotional when ego is involved. In general, like, people get emotional. So I know that when I'm getting kind of emotional, it's like, okay, yeah, this isn't real. This is just your ego, and you probably have to look at this a little more carefully, because usually when someone upsets you with something you said, they might have said something that's true, and you're having trouble accepting. So yeah, it's going back to that thing of self-reflection and stuff. Yeah, so that's important.
Super important to self-analyze, and that's why I don't like joining any teams. I mean, I love a lot of the principles of libertarians, but I'd never call myself a libertarian. I would say I like some of their ideas, because once I consider myself a libertarian, now I have to defend their ideologies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. We're the same. They're labels. Fuck that.
Yeah, because and then it stunts growth. It stunts.
Yes, it does. That's exactly what it does.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically saying I've exercised all possible different ideas and perspectives and conclusions, and this is the one that I got to, and so this is the one that makes the most sense. But it prevents you from saying this is the one that makes the most sense now. It's like, now you're planting your flag there, and thinking. This is the end of the road for thinking. Now it's just defending. You go from thinking to defending. Now I'm defending the conclusions that I've come to. And that's dangerous, right? And I think that's a big part of things. And I think when groups of people come together and they're honest and they're willing to share ideas, a lot of times we can filter out those shitty ideas and we can make sense of things. I think the internet has made it way too easy for people to be completely just unreasonable with their perspectives and ideas. You know, people online, you know, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you end up hanging out online, people will argue in a way that, you know, in person they wouldn't argue that way. They would be much more respectful.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that's a huge issue too. So but yeah, I can't thank you enough for taking time to stay up late again. Well, even though this wasn't nearly as late as last time, you were a trooper last time. I was getting mad. I'm like, how are people saying they have to go? I'm like, and it's late. I'm like, Jessica is like, who knows what time it is there? I'm like, how is she up and everybody else is is
I have a weekly meeting, which is, it has to be scheduled at 2 a.m. my time, because everyone else is like scattered around the world, but it's too important for me not to be there. So it's like every Thursday I have to get up at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. so that I have some time to drink coffee to be awake by 2 a.m. Luckily it's not a podcast. It's just it's a brainstorming session of a bunch of us, but yeah, yeah, I was thinking about that when I was talking about my sleeps. It's like I have to adjust my sleep cycles to get like 3 hours and then like maybe 4.5, or the reverse with this thing in between. But I always think about I can't remember who it was. I read this book where this guy, this very productive inventor, scientist guy, it wasn't Tesla, it was someone else, he found that his most productive lifestyle would include getting up, going to bed early, sleeping a bit, getting up at 1, working for a few hours, sleeping again, waking up early. So like intermittent like sleep chunks. And that made so much sense to me. And I'm like, wow, if I could train my body to do that. So that's what's inspiring me now, because I kind of need to do that at least once a week. I don't know if I could be as ambitious as to do that like every day. I'd love to do that, but I don't know if I could train myself to do that. I probably could. Maybe I'll do that as my next experiment on self. But yeah, it's almost midnight. I can't even believe it. What the hell? Where did the time go again?
Well, what's time, right? I mean, I don't even know what time is.
Those little numbers that are like changing in the top right hand corner.
I've heard the argument that math doesn't exist because the only way you can explain math is with more math. So it doesn't exist.
Oh my God.
I'll entertain every theory. Not that it doesn't make sense, but it's yeah. I mean, it's wild.
I'd introduce whoever said that to Tool. I'd say, listen to their music and tell me math doesn't exist.
I love Tool. That was it Anima, right? That was
Anima,
yeah, that was like one of my favorite albums growing up. And they had a huge cult following. So many, that's the thing. You can do what's trendy, but the bands like that, they're like, we're gonna make long songs. We're gonna have incredibly weird long.
They don't make songs, they make journeys. They're like epic. Have you heard the new one?
No, I've kind of got it. You know what? It's been
Fear Inoculum. Like, get it, just like listen to it today. I was actually nervous to play it for the first time because it was such a lead up to this album for the fans of Tool. We're such dorks, but it was years that they took to perfect this, and they wouldn't put it out until each and every one of them was happy with it, I believe. And boy, it was worth the wait. It's like every single tune is a freaking epic journey, and it's hard to believe that they've made their music even more complex than it was before. It's like they keep evolving so exquisitely as a unit and as an individuals, and you can hear each one as their individual genius, and then you hear this whole other thing as this unit, and it's like you can listen to it over and over and over and over and over, and then you hear a new flare in the bass line, or you hear like, wow, what did Danny just do there? I even know all their names. I'm a total Tool nerd. Like, I love them. If you ever have Maynard on, I have to come on too.
I'll have you
I need to become Maynard's friend. Like, he would love me.
He's big into wine, right?
Oh my God, he's so cool. He makes videos about why work is important. I mean, come on. You don't even have to be a tool, and that makes you like the coolest dude on the planet. And he's like so happy with his grapes. Oh.
Well, it is a passion project. The beautiful thing about wine is that it really isn't profitable like till way later when you really blow up. Initially, it's a horrendously expensive hobby. That, I mean, grapes, for example, and I've heard him explain this. Have you heard his interviews on the Joe Rogan podcast? He's been
Of course. I've heard every word he's ever said. I'm really a freak.
What are you, NSA over here? Listen. But he talked about how grapes, and it's so true, because I remember when my father, now he buys them, but when he used to grow them, he would talk about how it would take like 3 years before you can actually use the grapes as when it produces enough sugar to be able to use it to create wine. And Maynard was talking about how you end up trying to find the right grape for your soil and climate, and you might waste some land for 2 or 3 years. You invest 2 or 3 years into finding out that grape doesn't taste good on that, and
yep.
you have to find another one. And so it is this beautiful. And you know what it is about wine too, like, you're with friends, you're with family. Like my father, when he makes wine, the family's over, he has friends helping, they're drinking, they're eating together while they do it. Then once it's done, they go over each other's houses in little groups to kind of, oh, let's go see how Joanne's wine came out, or let's go see how Zay's wine came out. And they'll go over there and they'll hang out, and they sit in the wine cellar. And I remember being a kid, the wine cellar was right underneath my bedroom, and I'd be like, what the fuck are they doing down there for all this? It just seemed ridiculous. I mean, I'm like, what are they
lucky enough to have a wine cellar under your bedroom? Are you kidding?
Well, the coolest,
that is so cool.
There's literally a wine cellar like right there, right to my right over there, because this house was built by Portuguese people. A lot of the houses in this community where I live is they all have wine cellars, because it was built by Portuguese people who wanted to make wine.
So cool.
And they would sit down there. They would have the presunto, which is prosciutto for Italians, and they'd have chorizo, the sausage, and they would sit down there, would eat and drink, and it'd be there all night just talking and discussing. And looking back, I'm like, wow, man, what a simple way of life. But we got to get closer to that, and even the wine, like, some people would tell my dad, well, how much money are you actually saving by instead of buying it and this and that. And as I got older, I'm like, it's not even about that. It's not
about that.
No. And I would ask it before I got into wine. I would ask the same thing. I'm like, are you even saving any money? And you got to drink the same. And it was about like having everybody together and having a wine. Like, I remember we called a caneca. It would be, he would go fill it every time it was time for dinner. He'd go downstairs, fill it, because he'd go get his wine for dinner, and he'd fill up his glass, and it was like this traditional thing where he would go before dinner, he'd always go downstairs and get some wine from the wine cellar and come back up. And I just remember that. And I remember like all the fruit flies that would be in the house, and and like now people would be like, oh, if we're out to eat somewhere, we're eating outside, I'm like, oh, all these flies, it doesn't even bother me, because I'm so used to fruit flies around the house and being outdoors. It wasn't a big
you'd love my place. My place is like a breeding ground for fruit flies.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm growing citrus trees, and they have this sticky stuff that they eject from their leaves, and the flies freaking love it. So yeah, they're really, really attracted to them. One of my orange trees from seeds is like bigger than me now.
Wow.
Well, maybe I can turn my computer. I might lose my. I have too many. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nighttime.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of musicians like Maynard, when you find out how interesting they are, you're not surprised, because I'm like, you have to be interesting to be writing those type of songs. And just the music to me is interesting. It's fascinating because, like you said, it's a journey, and and the thing with bands, there's this band, they're a metalcore band, Devil Wears Prada, and initially they were like kind of
Does
like,
he?
what's that? Devil Wears Prada. It's
Does he?
well,
Probably.
probably, yeah. Probably, yeah, because he would love marketing and materialism and all that type of stuff. But I remember hearing an interview with them, and I love anybody who kind of pushes against whatever the narrative is, and the mainstream acceptance of like what normal is or what things should be. And they would talk about like, why do we have to go from verse to chorus to verse? Why do we have to do bridges here? Why do we have to do this, these build-ups and these breakdowns and these specific, and you hear that with their music, where like their music and the whole metalcore scene, that's what I found fascinating, was growing up in a world where so many songs, the structures of them were so similar, and you kind of see like the thinking. You're listening to the song, and you're like, okay, they're going to go to the chorus again, or they're going to do this, or they're going to, and to hear metalcore just throw that all away and be like, we're just gonna, like, you're not gonna know what the fuck's gonna happen next. Like, we're gonna speed up when you don't think we're gonna speed up. We're gonna slow down when you don't think. We're gonna get heavier. We're gonna do, and I love it, which really why I love the industrial scene too. Growing up, like I loved industrial music, because it's like, why does music only have to be with a keyboard or a guitar and a bass and drums, and why not get a keyboard or get these samples or these sounds and make music out of sounds, and like push back against like what music is and what it should sound like. There's this band in the 90s, Gravity Kills, and they were kind of the same way, where they would have all these weird, it's similar, I mean, I shouldn't say similar, kind of similar to Nine Inch Nails in regards to a lot of sounds and weird things that you're just like, what the fuck is that? And like, it just created a tone and a mood with the music. And it just, it was interesting because every time you listen to it, you'd find some new weird layered sample or sound that you didn't pick up on before. And I love that. I mean, that's kind of the beautiful thing about music, is that there really shouldn't be any rules. But I guess my point of this, now I'm going on my long rant, which is really surprising that it took this long for me to go on too long of a rant. But music is very similar to the dogma. We were talking about dogmas and how we can think that this is the way things are, because some of the best musicians and most interesting musicians were never taught, right? So they didn't say, this is the Bible, this is the book that tells you how to do things or how to understand things, or some of the best musicians, they don't know what music theory is, and they were self-taught, and maybe they learned it later, but they didn't adopt anybody else's dogma or anybody else's I guess way of playing or writing, because they kind of just experimented and then found what they liked. I always said, I'm not a very good musician, but I'm a good songwriter, because it was more about like, okay, is there a note or a rhythm or a beat or a melody that moved me and I felt something, and that was what made me think, like, let me hold on to this. It wasn't about like, oh, this is the way the song should be written, or this is the way music should be written. It was about like, okay, what do I feel? Does it hit an emotional chord? Do I get something? Do I feel something when I play this, or sing this, or hear this melody? And that can bring you down some really interesting spots, instead of being like, oh no, this is a structure that things should be written. That's why you see so many cover bands that are incredible musicians in regards to their ability to play other people's stuff and understand other people's music. But when it comes down to them writing their own original stuff, a lot of times it's awful, and they're a great cover band, but they can't write their own stuff because they don't understand that music isn't, it's not like math, right? Like 1+1's always 2. It's not that.
I was just gonna say, like, you can see my brain going here. All these cogs are squeaking. I was thinking, like, maybe that's one of the ways that art and science are actually fundamentally different. Like, because I don't know, I don't want to say too much more about that because I suppose that's also a controversial topic. But like, no,
Huge.
I totally agree with you. I think the most wonderful artists of all kinds are just, yeah, they're, of course they're not taught. It's like you can increase your technical ability with learning, but I mean, if you're a genius writer, you're just a genius writer. What else was I gonna say? Something about oh yeah, right. I used to listen to Skinny Puppy. That's what I was gonna say. It's so funny. Nobody here knows who they are.
Well,
um,
in that genre, you had like KMFDM was a little bit more popular. You had Ministry.
yeah,
That they were kind of, but there were so many really interesting, industrial bands. I don't even know what to call them, but because I mean, I'm not sure what they are really. There's so many subgenres and whatnot, but yeah, I mean, it just it pushed back against what music is or should be.
yeah, totally.
There's a great documentary about the history of industrial music that was, and I forget who gets. Oh my God, what the hell's the name of the artist that gets the credit for creating industrial music? And I think they created a record label called Industrial Records, and that kind of got the credit for it. But that was their thinking, was like, why can't we just find, like, make noises into songs? And what is a song? Does it have to have this pattern? Does it have to have this this just typical rules that have to be followed? So it's interesting, but it really, you can look at that and look at just all aspects of life and just be like, okay, well, why not break the rules and everything and how we perceive anything? That's why Thaddeus Russell, who's been on the show before, sometimes he talks a lot about like, there is no such thing as truth, with a capital T. Like, everything can be debated, everything can be perceived differently. And I think in some cases he's kind of right. Like, is there anything that's 100% true? I mean, you think about people that lived, when they thought the earth was flat, they were just as convinced back then that the earth was flat as we are convinced that the earth is round right now. Like,
Is there an Earth?
is there an earth, right? I mean, it's simulation theory, right? Are we, because we know, and Rogan has said this numerous of times, and he's absolutely right. There's going to be a time where we'll be able to recreate reality to a point where we won't know the difference between virtual reality and actual.
Yeah, how do we know we haven't already reached that time? That's the creepy part.
Exactly. We don't.
I don't know. I seriously don't know. I have this argument with my mate here all the time about the simulation theory, like, because that's the argument, right? It's like, if well, it goes like this. We're trying to develop virtual reality environments to the point where we won't be able to distinguish, once we put the thing on, our brains will be taken over and we won't know that we're in this virtual reality because it will be indistinguishable from this. So we will reach that point eventually. So it's just a matter of time. So therefore, in a weird philosophical sense, or maybe a real sense, we already have. So, like, I don't know. I absolutely cannot answer the question for myself. Like, is this a simulation? Am I a brain in a vat? Am I the only thing that exists? Am I generating all of this stuff around me to entertain myself so that I can produce bioenergy for some machines? I mean, it sounds stupid, but it's like, I have to ask these questions because I honestly don't know what the answers are. And it's like, if there isn't an answer, then you still have to look for it in my book.
I think therefore
Yeah.
I am, right?
Hmm.
That wasn't that
I
the
think therefore I am a brain in a vat.
yeah, I mean, we don't know, and that's what makes philosophy so interesting is that it's just a bunch of questions with no answers, and they're
Yeah.
constantly being debated, and that's literally the same tactic I use in everything that I literally take that spirit of philosophy of like question everything. Don't inherit any dogma. Don't inherit any idea as it being the end all be all truth. Be be open to questioning even your deepest strongest beliefs, and constantly do that, and hope that in that journey you do get closer to some actual truth.
Do you have any deep, strong beliefs, and what is one?
Yeah, I don't, it it's funny because even like as strong as I am on vaccines, like I'm open to the idea that maybe the polio vaccine did prevent humanity from dying off, and something like that. Even though that's like one of my strongest, just I guess topics that I'm the most strongest in regards to. Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I stand. I stand like, okay, um, I haven't seen much evidence that they've done more good than harm in the world. But I'll stop and correct myself, and I'll be like, okay, well, maybe there are some examples. Am I going to dismiss a good example of it being helpful in the world because of my strong beliefs about it as a whole? And that's something that like, so I don't know if I have any. I mean, it's like the older I get, the less I'm sure of anything. I mean, I'm
Yeah, that's for sure.
when I started this podcast, I remember like having all these ideas that I wanted to share, and I want to have interesting people on and share my ideas with it. Now it's more like I want to have interesting people on because I want them to help me understand all the things I don't understand. And maybe we can figure it out as we chat. Because I'm not, I don't really, I mean, I know a few things I can be really comfortable saying, okay, this is where I stand. But even then, it's like, I'm not, this is where I stand now. I'm okay with it's just, I'm not married to any ideas, none whatsoever. I really, it's funny because you can see me like just struggling to answer your question because I don't know.
No, you are answering. That's all. I was just going to say, that's all you need to say. This is where I stand now. Like, that's it. Yeah, systems are dynamic. So, like, yeah, it's very important to be plastic and to flow with everything that surrounds you. And it's also important to remember, like, it's kind of like the main important thing is to how do I say this without sounding like a robot? Um, to live the best life, like, and
YOLO, right? Yeah.
yeah, yes, I don't know if that's true either. Um, yeah, but like the best life is like it's not your life at all. It's like you're experiencing something. Okay, sure, but like this goes back to that talk where that seems like freaking yesterday that we were talking about that about suicide and depression. So this goes back to that. It's like the antidote and the opposite of isolation is connection. So like I think the older you get, the more connected you get. And what that means is it's literally like a one-to-one correlation with letting go of like things that you held on to for a long time. For example, like beliefs, you know, like not that they become outdated, but it's because maybe you just stop caring so much. Maybe you, I don't know, maybe you start realizing that it doesn't serve a sort of so-called greater good, or the, you know, the connectedness of everything to like believe, you know, in one God or something like that. I don't know. That's just an example, but
Well, you talked talked about hormones before. There's a theory that men get less aggressive when they get older because their testosterone levels go down, and women, their testosterone levels slightly go up as they get older, so they get a little bit more aggressive. And
who the fuck told you that?
I'm curious if that has something to do with it. Like when you're young, you're so energetic that your first reaction is to defend your dogma, defend your perspectives, and fight back and debate, and almost as tired, like you're almost tired and you're too tired to fight. You know, it's almost like when you're married for a long time, you're like, okay, well, I mean, people should be doing this right off the bat, but most people don't start doing it until later. Like, pick and choose your fights. Like, I'm too exhausted to fight over every little thing. So let me just pick the things that are really important to debate and get in a possible argument over. And those are the things I'm going to go to bat for and fight for. All the little things I'm not going to stress about. I wonder if that mentality also seeps into just the way you look at everything. Like, okay, I was really, when I had a lot of energy, I was really strongly passionate about these issues. And now that I have less energy, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to debate with somebody over this or over that, which makes you, and then think like, okay, maybe this isn't, maybe my belief on this issue isn't as strong as it should be, or no, I incorrectly said that. Maybe your belief was stronger than it should have been, and maybe now that you aren't spending so much time defending it and you're spending more time maybe thinking about it, you think like, okay, maybe there's more sides of the story, maybe there is other perspectives I haven't entertained. And
yeah, that's what I was going to say. It comes with experience and a larger knowledge base too. Like the more experiences you have through other people, that's why, again, going back to the socialness of humans, it's like the more of those interactions you have and true experience, sharing experiences that you have, the faster that evolution happens, I think. And I think it also goes the other way. If you cut yourself off from these sharing experiences, I think your evolution gets stunted. I think that's probably happened in a lot of cases, especially with people who are shaming people who haven't run to get injected.
and yeah, and that's really a perfect example of it, because you get in conversation with somebody about the COVID issue. It's amazing how many people are actually like super passionate about their stance on it and know very little about it.
Have you had any of these people, like, I don't know what social media you're on. I'm only on Facebook, but I'm not on it very much. And I just deactivated it again because every time I go on it, I feel like I've been infected somehow. Anyway, so have you seen these posts of your friends from the past? I don't know. You don't have a weird life like I did, where I have like trails of friends from the past everywhere because I moved so much. But friends from the past, posting photographs of themselves in clinics or in pharmacies or wherever the hell they did it, with band-aids on their arms, saying something absolutely fucking bizarre, like really bizarre, like, I feel so elated, I just got my second jab. Like the language that they're using to describe it is like they just snorted a line of cocaine or something. It's like really weird. Have you seen that? Because it's common on my feed. Maybe I just have weird friends.
Yeah, or there's a lot of cocaine where they live. I don't know. I mean, it's
maybe.
or it's virtual signaling. I mean, you see it all the time.
Have you seen that though? Like, or is this really just something like
on Facebook? Like, your default picture having that little thing around it where I just got vaxxed or whatever.
Yeah, this is the same kind of thing, but like it goes beyond pride. It's like,
Maybe there's a lack of fulfillment in their lives and they feel like now they truly convinced that they're doing something for the betterment of humanity.
is it that, or is it like this weird, like pent up, um, like after a year and a half of being fear-mongered, seriously fear-mongered, and like maybe not being so happy before that either, maybe trapped in a life that you're not so satisfied with, maybe a bunch of things like, and you're just like, your little sphere is getting, more and more high pressure, and then all of a sudden they convince you that this thing is the solution to not only this problem, but all your problems. So you fixate on that concept and you associate it with the solution to all your fucking problems. That's a theory I came up with. And I'm like, that would explain why people are describing this bizarre thing as something that makes them feel elated. Because from what I'm studying in the adverse event data, this does not make you feel elated. This gives you diarrhea. This can kill you. This can reactivate your multiple sclerosis. This can make you blind. This can give you tinnitus so that you want to kill yourself. This might be why we're seeing more suicides. The ringing in the ear thing. Headaches that people describe as being completely incapacitating. Anyway, I could go on, but these shots don't make people feel elated. They're not designed to. And I go back to my Star Wars thing with the needle thing. Like, I'm sorry, there can't be this many people on the planet that are excited by being injected into the muscle, which hurts, and then have something from a syringe forcefully injected into that muscle tissue, and the crunching and the cells being killed and like, I don't like that whole thing myself, but it's bizarre. So I think maybe that's what they've equated it to. And it kind of combines with this whole thing where they believe the fabrication that their lives are going to get back to normal. And maybe a couple of them have gone on a couple of trips in the meantime. Maybe they've flown because they were able to show their papers like in Nazi Germany. But it's not going to last, people. It's not. Just look at any story from history that has anything to do with tyrannical leaders. You will see that the progression, the timeline, it's the same. Except this is way worse because we have this interwoven technological, aspect here where everything is digitized. And perhaps it's not so crazy to think that we are the next unit to be digitized. Maybe we are going to be more than, data collection units in a capture my data way. Maybe it's going to be something more high tech. If there's one thing humans are good at, it's evolution of technology. So I just wanted another rant there.
No, but it's important. I mean, it really is. And people who are talking about 5G and the metals that could be in the vaccines and some connection to the 5G and the metals and all, who knows? I mean, to me, again, this is one of those things where I'm not married to any idea. There's been so many things that years ago I would look at and be like, if that's going to happen, that's far down the line from now. I mean, that's way down the road. I'm like, we're not going to see it in our lifetime. And now you're starting to see things kind of like baby steps in that direction. You're seeing the whole transgender conversation, which is a little weird because it's like that's another one of those taboo topics where you can't really talk about it because you seem insensitive. And it's like, well, why can't we say that, like, hey, if like, why not wait till you're a little later, you're a little older and a little later in life to decide to have hormone replacement, so you don't make a permanent decision when you're just going through a possible phase in life where you're just trying to fit in. Maybe you're trying to find yourself. I mean, all of us, if we look at historically the way we dress, you know, in our teens and then our 20s and then our 30s, like we've made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of times we're like, fuck, that was a stupid phase. How did I ever think that looked good? Well, you know, why make permanent decisions? Why let kids make permanent decisions at that age? And some of the people who are questioning the motives are saying that's because we want to throw gender completely out the window and just look at humans as just humans. Like there is no gender. There is the line between, and then eventually it'll lead to the line between human and robots will be blurry. And then it's like, well, how much digital interaction, or how much of our bodies and who we are as humans can be robotic or digital before we're not human, right? I mean, like this whole idea of like planting chips in us and all this stuff, and maybe robotic limbs or whatever, you know, or you know, when Elon Musk, what he talked about, what I think he said it on the Rogan podcast, or said it to Rogan. I remember hearing Rogan talk about it, where he said that one day you'll be able to Google search something without a computer. You'll be able to do it just in your brain, you know. I mean, are they blurring the line between what the fuck a human is? Are they, you know, to the point where we'll be more accepting of these things, of you know, basically combining with, you know, the transhuman?
It's a good theory.
You know, it seems weird. I mean, it seems kind of, but you can kind of
No, 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 it doesn't sound weird at all. It sounds logical to me. I always approach things from the deconstruction, like construction deconstruction place. So like if I, like, okay, I don't know if I told you this before, but up until recent times, my goal, and I'm saying this in all seriousness, was to be a cybernetically enhanced human being. I wanted an immune system that was impervious to everything. That was my goal. I want skin that is self-repairing. I want to be like a cybernetically enhanced human being. A lot of people either react like, what the hell are you talking about? Or like, why would you want to do that to your body? Anyway, so I don't feel that way anymore, which is also very interesting. And this is why I think I don't find any of those ideas outlandish at all based on what I've learned. But I don't think that that's what's happening, because I imagine that if that is what would be happening, it wouldn't be happening that way. It wouldn't be like throw a bag of marbles into an engine and let's see what happens. You know, it would be much more carefully laid out. Maybe I'm being naive, but my take on it is if they were trying to digitize humans for reals, like if they were trying to get every human being chipped or whatever, so that, well, I don't know, there are different motivations for doing that. You can do it to turn the human into a unit, like non-autonomous unit, which is a nightmare, or you can do it to enhance them. These are very, very different things. So maybe I'm wrong, because I always think of things in terms of productivity, not destruction. So I should like state that. If we were on a course of making a human being a more enhanced version of itself through technology, then I think that they would have real clinical trials, and they would offer people an opportunity to volunteer. And I had always thought that when that happens, because I think that will happen as well, if we ever evolve past this sick bastard psychopath billionaire shit, into something beautiful and productive that we're capable of doing, then I would totally volunteer. Like I would be like, yeah, sign me up. I mean, I would have to see long-term safety data, of course. And you know, they'd have to have a lot of studies done before I ever said, yes, put the nanobots in me. I want to convert my T cells into, like, whatever. So, but yeah, I just realized as I'm talking this out, it's, that probably wouldn't be the goal if they actually were trying to turn, the human into an automaton for creating labor leagues or labor forces or whatever. Then maybe they would do it the way that they're doing it and just throw a bag of marbles into an engine, which is basically what I think this COVID injection program is. There's no, there's no long-term safety data. Nobody knows the effect until now. Like, we're seeing the destructive effects of the spike protein. We're seeing vaccine-induced injuries. Not, they didn't die from COVID. They died from something that you can clinically, like, distinguish from that. In terms of, anyway, I'll get into that when I publish my paper, but it's just like crazy, like, that they did this. And it's crazy. It's not crazy that they did it. That's not the crazy part. The crazy part is the compliance. The crazy part is well, I want to travel again. The crazy part is, well, they're coercing me, but I don't care. That's the crazy part to me. It's like, this is on us. This is on the people who've decided to do this. And you know what? You might think that I'm a dissident for standing strong in my position not to participate in this experiment, but I think that you've put us, me and everyone else who's decided to not consent, in a very terrible position here. Because, for the last 16 months where I live, I can't do anything. I can't eat at a restaurant. I can't go to a gym. I can't go to a synagogue if I wanted to, which I don't do, but whatever. They even prevented us from going into the sea for a while. They're probably going to do it again in another week. I can't fly. I can't travel. I can't do anything. So why is that? Well, it's because these rules have been enforced on us because they could be enforced on us because enough people participated in the project, in the experiment. So thank you very much. I might not be your favorite person for standing strong, but I'm pretty pissed too. I just like to say that because I've never said that out loud before, except to my personal friends. I don't think many people think about it from that point of view, and I think it's important for everyone to realize the role that they're playing. You are important, and if you're making bad decisions, it's not good because it affects everyone. Everyone. I'm laughing, but it's not funny. It's like we're really, really, really heading for a crash. Again, I'm gonna reiterate what Robert says when he starts getting all dark and brooding. It's like that happens to me too. I'm like, maybe I should pull back on the on the negativity a little bit. No, everything's gonna be fine. I was kidding. We're fine.
It's true, but in a way, you almost have to get people worked up again, because when people are given a little bit of freedom and they're happy because they have a little bit of their lives back, they kind of forget that it was unjust to take any of it away in the first place.
No, that's what we talked about last time. It's just the link in the chain on the news shortening thing. It's like,
and that's the thing in North Korea, the government's also telling them.
I was just thinking about them.
That protecting them, that all the lack of privacy, all the lack of freedom, and it's all to protect them. In China, they're convinced the same thing. The government. So it's like, why do we think America is the moral country that they're taking away your freedoms just to protect you? It's like, no, it's always power. And the thing about America too is that our history is so little and it's so short, and people aren't aware of the fact that before America, there's dictators everywhere, there's monarchies everywhere, and even after America, there's still, in some countries, I think my my parents grew up with Salazar as the dictator in Portugal. So they were alive when he was still ruling. And so, I mean, it's not that long ago. And so
No,
when people
exactly.
act like, like, oh, why would people want to do this? Why? I'm like, because now they've convinced you that we have a democracy. They convince you that the people are the ones with the power. But the truth is, we still live in a monarchy, but we're just as brainwashed as the people in North Korea and China or any other dictatorship or communist country. And I don't even like to say communist country, because communism is just, it's a ism, just like all the other isms. But the elite, those in power, I mean, what better trick than to have all the power and convince the people that they're the ones with the power? It's like, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's like, no. I know I get all your money, and I get to create any rules I want and take away any freedoms, but I work for you. I'm here for you. You guys are the ones who put me here. I'm here for you. I'm here to protect you. It's like, it's such a, I mean, it's reverse
Oh
psychology.
yeah, can I have a ride in your private jet? Can I use your golden toilet? Oh, you're here for me? Okay, prove it. I want to ride in your plane right now. Ugh.
Yeah.
No, that fascinates me about that CCP guy. Everyone's terrified of him in China. Like, I think the Chinese people are probably good people, and they're probably just, they either don't know that there's another world out there because they grow up with, this, and they don't know anything else. They literally don't know anything else because they're not allowed to. But I mean, 1 point something billion people is a lot of people. What percentage of them ask themselves, maybe just to themselves, silently, what makes that guy better than me at running a country? Like, why is he so special?
But isn't that the illusion? I mean, isn't that that's the brainwashing? When we get scared because of
So where are the people who aren't brainwashed? Because there has to be, just based on, basic statistical blah blahs, like there has to be a pool of people within this huge sample that aren't brainwashed, just statistically, right?
yeah.
Where are they? What percentage are they?
We're doing podcasts. We're doing Union of the Unwanteds, where we're connected with one another, and
All right.
the other ones who are asking the same questions are listening to these conversations, saying, "Holy shit, we're out there! Like, there's more of us than I thought." And
There are a lot of us, and by us, I'm actually referring to the people who've opted out of this experiment. Really, like we've been. Even I was convinced that I was really, really part of a tiny minority, but no, it's a quarter of the country now who's. That's a lot. 1 out of 4 people. That's a lot of people who said I don't think so. I mean, okay, sure, there are lots of them are children, and they just haven't gotten to them yet. But and granted, that means that that number is going to change soon. But it's inspiring to hear that for now. And
yes,
it's also inspiring to hear, that even if 90% of this place falls, that 50% of other places haven't. It's good to know. Yeah, we need to share. That's so important right now.
look at that. We found a way to end it on a positive note.
Da, 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 da! We did
Everybody who had the gun in their hand, put it down. Everything's
it. No, put it down.
put the knife down. You could take apart the noose. Everything's gonna be fine.
You can find my email on my website, and you can email me if you want to talk. I'm serious. I answer every email I get. Usually I get emails from people asking about my data, but I'm kind of serious right now. I don't know who watches these things, but I really mean that. If you want to send me an email and talk or ask questions about data or viruses or anything, I'm very, very much always here. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I'll put your website as always in the show description. People can reach out to you, and I try to do the same thing when people hit me up. I'm on so many different platforms just because, I mean, one, because it's free it's a free way of getting your work out there and the conversations out there. It's like, if I can utilize all of them, why not? And so I'm on all the platforms, so I'll get messages on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I try to respond to all of them, because I think it's really important to let people know that, like, hey, you're not alone, you matter, and we're here and we're together. And there is a resistance. There is a group of us that are, and the resistance isn't one type of person. It's not libertarians, it's not anti-vaxxers, it's people who, it's good people who really are just skeptical. And typically, historically, especially of late, skepticism means you are debunking, the skeptics, the the people who make a living doing it are usually the ones not being skeptical and just defending the mainstream narrative. But it's nice to take that word back, because we are the skeptics. We're the ones who are asking the questions. We're the ones who are not just taking their word for it. And we need to constantly do that. And even people in our own group, people.
I like that name for a band. We are the skeptics.
That is, yeah. That
I
is.
like that. It's always going back to music for me. So I'm gonna say one more thing. So this is my idea.
It's on
I
record.
want to make T-shirts, but anyone can use this idea. I want to make T-shirts that say, make medical data private again. And this comes from my best old friend from Newfoundland, Natalie Noseworthy. She came up with it. She's actually one of the most talented musicians I've ever known in my life. But yeah, she came up with that the other day, and I just love it. So I think we should all make T-shirts that say that. And here's my cat's microphone tail.
I was just talking to a girl who is moving to Newfoundland. Her boyfriend plays hockey, and I think he grew up there. But she literally, I think, is on her way driving there right now from Massachusetts. And
Wow.
I was asking her some questions about it, because I didn't know much about it. I'm like, do they have an accent? What language? It's like,
Yeah, they do. We do. Yeah.
I was so naive to the whole cult. I'm like, Newfoundland. I'm like, that sounds like its own country? It's
it kind of was like 60 something years ago. It wasn't part of Canada. So they joined the Confederation. God, I've been gone a long time. Holy shit. Anyway, yeah, so they joined Canada, but it was settled by mainly Irish settlers, which is why we have the accent. And it basically exists because of fishing, because the waters of Newfoundland were so filled with cod, apparently you couldn't get a boat through it, like back in the day. Now there are no more cod. That was my dad's job, to save the cod. He did a good job, actually. Last I heard, their stocks were coming back off a couple of places off the Grand Banks. But anyway, yeah, Newfoundland's a very charming place, and like some people talk with an accent like this, like it's a little bit stronger. I've lost it, so all the Newfoundlanders listening to this now just said, "Holy shit, Jess, that was the worst Newfoundland accent impression I've ever heard." Come on now, I've been living in this place for like 15 years. Give me a break. So it like varies. I, after living there for 17 years, could not understand people who came from the outports after 17 years. They not only had like these very strong dialects, they had their own words for things. So like it wouldn't just be about not understanding what they were saying from intonation and shit. It would be like, what was that word? And there's French in Saint Pierre. So in a part of Newfoundland, they're speaking French as well. So for the most part, it's English though. It's just like Newfoundland English.
Yeah, that's interesting, because she did say there was a strong Irish, influence there, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. I'm like, the Irish, so that makes sense. Yeah, that's unique. That's the cool thing about Canada, is that you have these little places where, I mean, you go to Quebec. I remember the first time I went to Quebec, I'm like, did I just drive to France? I'm like, this is so weird. I'm like, I'm in France. I'm getting a ticket because I parked in a non-parking area, but the sign is in French, and the cop didn't care that I can't read French. So
no, they won't.
They will. But
Yeah,
it,
Montreal and Quebec City are like going to Europe. They're very beautiful places. Like Quebec City is, I think, the most beautiful place in Canada. Um, but yeah, Montreal is it's like, oh, sorry, Quebec is like its own thing. Like each province is its own thing, actually. Like Alberta is like redneck land. BC is like hippie land. Newfoundland is Newfoundland. Quebec is like, French land. Ontario is like, I don't know. I grew up in Ontario, so whatever I am. Saskatchewan, I have no idea. Uh, what am I missing? Manitoba? Is that a province? Oh, it's been goddamn too long since I was in Canada. Yeah, Nova Scotia has its own place, and New Brunswick, and I don't know, PEI. Each one is its own, like, I don't know, island
its own
community, I
culture,
suppose.
its own, yeah, has its own little flavor. That's pretty cool. I mean, America's kind of similar when you go to the East Coast, West Coast, the South.
Yep.
So very similar, but I know it's super late there and I've kept you up. I mean,
Yeah, I should go. It's like 20 to 1 now, and I have to pee, and my
and,
cat's like really annoyed.
and you told me you were tired like 8 hours ago before we
Yes.
started. But
Yeah.
well, one thing I'm sure of is that we can't do a short podcast. That's the only thing. You asked me if I'm sure of anything. That's about the only thing I'm sure of.
Ah, good. We have another positive thing to end on.
Yeah, we're not capable of doing a recording a short podcast. We'll definitely have to do this again, hopefully in the near future. And thank you so much for your time. You're always so gracious with taking up and especially with the weird hour time difference. You're always so gracious with your time and staying up and keeping your energy levels at a sustainable level where you can you keep it together. I mean, definitely would not be as good as you are at this time, but it's
Oh, well, thanks. You kind of like leveled me off because I was like low vibration mode at the beginning. So yeah, no, it's always a pleasure and super interesting. We can literally talk for 12 more hours, I'm sure about that. But yep, we're gonna have to do it again because everyone's tired of us now.
people loved it. It's funny because the first time we chatted, it was one of those podcasts where I'm like, wow, that was really fun. I hope the listeners can sense that and they kind of feel like they're on this journey, this conversation with us. And I got amazing feedback. It's
Brilliant.
yeah, it was awesome. People really enjoyed it. And I talked about it a few times. I'm like, you guys have to. I'm like, it was one of my favorite podcasts I've done in forever. I'm like, check out that episode. And I had tons of awesome. I think people really, really connect with just honesty and people just being honest about how they feel and who they are and what they think. And
Showing their sweaty armpits.
yeah,
It's like, hey, we all have them.
I think so much of our everyday interactions with people are putting on this facade.
Fronts.
Yeah, front and when you just hear people be honest, it's comforting and it's nice. So I think people really appreciate that. So but thank you so much, Jessica. We'll definitely stay in touch and I'll send you the links and everything once it's up and live.
Yay, I can't wait.
Thanks.
Really.
Great night. Take care.
Okay, so good night from Checkpoint.
That's right. Kitty cat.
And jazz.
Ciao.
Ciao bello.